Good morning once again. Hello and welcome. Hi. I'm so happy that some people listened to me, although some other people did not listen to me. I'm not beefing you yet. You still have enough time to move forward. Thank you very much. Right now it is 9:42 and I believe it's time for us to get to it. I understand that a lot of people are still managing on Nigerian time and African time and all of that, but we're trying to move away from that narrative. Anyway, you are welcome. I am Kemi Michael. By the way, I am not Yoruba. I just have to put that out there. My full name is Akimini Obong, but let's stick with Kemi Michael. Thank you very much. You're welcome to Business Days Talent Management. You're very, very welcome. And please tell your neighbor you're welcome. Tell them. I know we do that in church, but I feel like we should do that everywhere. Thank you very, very much. And yes, we are going to begin right away. First off, we're going to introduce he's representing our publisher. That's our editor, Mr. Tayo Fabule. Please, a round of applause. And he's going to be giving the welcome address right away. Please keep clapping. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you, Kemi. Welcome all you beautiful people, and a warm wishes from our publisher. I'll keep it short, but first I'll apologize that we're starting late. We shouldn't, but we are. But for all of you who have come early, I think you all deserve a round of applause. Thank you. For us to have this event today, I think it's timely. Obviously, the best performing story, by the way, on our website is on Jakba. And our conference is on talent management in an age of, or in a period of mobility. So people are quite mobile, and it's going to get worse. I have data before me that shows that by 2050, and I think we'll probably put context to what we're coming to do here today. By 2050, the largest source of the world's talent will be Nigeria. No surprises. We have the youngest population, and going forward, people of working age will come from this part of the world, from Nigeria in particular. And the countries that are struggling with talent, you don't need to guess also. Among them, you have South Korea, Japan, Spain, Germany, and of course, Canada, Italy, France, UK, the United States. So it's not, what is happening isn't a strange phenomenon. Would it happen if Nigeria was performing well? Yes, it's my guess, because basically there's a shortage of talent. So talent will, so in physics, I wasn't a good science student, but in physics you learn capital, whether it's financial capital or human capital, will go to the place of least resistance. So the West is putting up things to attract talent. Most of you are in the room today. Business Day, in our newsroom, I argue, and I'm yet to say it, we're arguably the ones with the youngest newsroom. So the average age in the newsroom is we're very young newsroom, and it's deliberate. And I see them live also within the country and outside of the country. Thankfully, not as much as others are saying it, because we are putting things in place to also make them stay. Which takes me to the next thing. A couple of weeks ago, someone shared a PDF with me, 8-pager, and was basically on trying to, and I have to read the title because it was quite interesting, and I shared it with my senior colleagues, my colleagues in the office. So basically it was in about 12 pages of cartoons trying to explain why young people go, why they leave companies. And I want to read it, what it says. Dear bosses, here's why young, talented employees all seem to be leaving. And then that's the first page. I won't bore you with, it's about 25 pages actually. The last page, and I think it's for me was a learning point, was this. So it says, remember, if they're not growing, they're going. Because what is common among people today is that they're looking for places not just to get a job, but a place that will also prepare them for the next phase of their life. So they have to grow on the job. So the days of, okay, I've offered you a job, aren't you happy? Stay. No. Is this job going to prepare me for my next job? If it's not, they're leaving. So they have to grow on the job. And that's what we're trying to do in Business Day. And I think that's why we're all here today, just trying to learn better how to attract talent, keep the talent, and let the talent grow. But please, obviously, remember what I said. Whether Nigeria was doing well economically or politically, people will still go because there is a shortage of talent. And where in the world can you find young people, the future workforce, than in Nigeria? So for those of you who hire, for those of you who train, for those of you who are looking to work, it's a huge opportunity today to be a Nigerian, because you'll be in demand, the people you train will be in demand, and you also have direct access to that pool of talent. So today we've put together wonderful panelists, some of the best in the business, who will talk about how to attract that talent, how to retain that talent, how to train that talent, how to make that talent grow. So please pay attention and have a wonderful, fruitful, and rewarding time. So on behalf of Business Day, I welcome you all and wish you happy deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy that was very short and simple. And a lot of people did not doze off at any point. That was very beautiful. All right, before we carry on, I would like to tell you to kindly put your phone on silent or vibrate so that we're not going to be distracting anybody, our panelists, our moderators, when they happen to be talking. Thank you very, very much. And also, if you know that there are people that need to listen to this, invite them. Tell them to come on. You know, you can share your address with them, as well as tell them what exactly is happening. Let them come on and hear what is going on. Now we're going to move on to our next port of call, and that is our first panel. I'm going to be inviting Ada Goodness Armstrong, who is the next, or the moderator rather, of that panel. Please put a round of applause. Can you see how beautiful she looks? Louder. 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 Thank you very, very much. All right, so while she is seated, I'm just going to mention our knowledge partners. Now we've got People's Practice that happens to be our knowledge partner. Please put a round of applause for them. Thank you very much. And of course our sponsors, Seamless HR, Jobberman, and Lead Riot. Thank you so much for putting together all of this and making sure that this is a success. We really do appreciate it. All right, I'm going to be handing over to Ada right now. I hope you're ready for us. Okay, I love it. That is the attitude. Okay.
This today is none other than Tone. Please, a round of applause as I call their names. Tone Tunde and Jones. She's the founder of the People Practice and also one of the people putting this together today for us. So please, a round of applause for her as she comes up. Please sit by so that I can ask you all the questions. Please don't get tired of clapping because we have amazing people here. My second panelist is none other than Elizabeth Okonji. She is the founder of TGL Labs, and she will be joining my panel today. Please sit here. And the third, but not my final panelist, is Samantha Ifezulike. She is the head of people and culture at Jobberman Nigeria. Please, a round of applause for her. So just before we go ahead, we're going to acknowledge the commissioner who's just walked in. So.
All right, please put a hand together for the Commissioner of Innovation, Science, Technology, Lagos State. Now he is Olatubosun Alaka. Welcome. Alake, I'm so sorry for scattering your name. All right, you're very welcome. Now, before Ada goes on, I have to mention this about Ada. Now, her full name is Goodness Ada Armstrong, and she is the founder of Career Space that reshapes graduate talent recruitment in Africa. Please, let's put a round of applause for her. Thank you very much. All right, on to you.
Thank you very much. We're going to go straight into it. My panel is going to be talking about culture in today's workplace. Basically how changing work styles and technology act as an enabler for today's workplace. Now, I think this is a topic that cuts across everyone in this room. The way we used to work 3-4 years ago has changed drastically for me and for everyone here. And I think it's an ongoing conversation, right? So we're going to keep talking about it. If you go for another panel session next week, you will hear it. So don't be tired, right? So I'm going to start with Tom. Just again, this is going to be very practical. Let's talk through how these things have changed in our own workplaces and how we personally work as well, just so that it's more relatable to everyone. And please have your questions ready for when we're done. We have 10 minutes for Q&A. So tell me, Tom, how has work changed for you since COVID? I mean, it feels like there's a pre-COVID workplace and a post-COVID workplace. Tell me about it.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Is it loud enough? Thank
Yes.
you so much, Ada. I can speak about culture in my sleep. Literally, I like to call myself the culture queen, But literally, like you said, pre-COVID, culture was addressed differently in the global workspace, not just Nigeria. And once COVID happened, everyone had talked about the future of work for so long that it dawned on us really quickly that the future of work was here and was now our current, reality. One of the first things that we saw was remote work. So for us with our clients of the people practice, a few of them easily gravitated towards using technology and automating a lot of their practices and processes. But we had a few clients that struggled, a few clients who thought that work could not be done in absentia. A lot of people who needed to see their employees to recognize that performance was happening. Yeah. So if you're not here, then how do we trust that you're working? So the first thing I think that culture changed was trust and also the perspective of work. We saw that people had to change how they saw work. People had to focus more on outputs as opposed to just functionality and performing and being busy. Literally, that was the first thing. We also saw that increase in technology. People had to now start to use HR tools that could help with connection, HR tools that could help with collaboration. So there needed to be that seamless connection and collaboration between teams. Leaders as well had to change how they manage their people. How you manage people while they're physically present is different from how you manage them when they're working remotely. How do you onboard them? How do you recruit them, and let them have the same experience or even a richer experience than they would have had physically. So that was literally what it was for us. Thank you.
I'm going to have you speak to that if someone has not finished saying everything. How has it changed for you?
So it changed in the sense that I think as people, HR people, would spend so much time talking about the future of work and not preparing for the future of work. We had leaders who had no clue what to do when they weren't seeing people. And who's to blame? Yeah, I think it's our fault. So what changed immediately for me, I was working in a business that was fully on-site. Our processes for business were even 100% paper-based right before COVID hit.
Wow.
And it was like a sense of deja vu or just premonition. I was like the noisemaker in the room saying, this thing we're hearing of in November is coming to Nigeria. People come to Nigeria every day. It just takes one guy on a flight from China. And we're in it. And then just trying to instigate that change. Now, the resistance that you'll meet for that type of thing that people aren't seeing in reality is actually from the leaders. Yeah. So as HR people, what changed in our roles was you have to think about the business now a little bit more upfront than you would have before. You have to find a way to present the case for whatever it is you're touting. So if you're touting the future of work arrived. And what do? You had a bunch of leaders who didn't know what to do with their employees, who had to be at home, and you couldn't shut down your business. So how? And when you pay for Udemy or LinkedIn Learning and all those types of things, and before COVID, people would say, you want to go for the physical training, for networking, you know? And you had to get people learning through these platforms. What did you do? How do you manage performance when people weren't even using the tools? So we had to start having, at the
Serious
company I was working
conversations.
at the time, we had to start having conversations. We had to start talking too much, like getting on Teams calls, getting on Zoom calls, having town
can you
hall
hear me?
meetings, and you didn't me. Having town hall meetings, having conversations that people you typically would know. Stop sending surveys. We stopped sending out the surveys because they'll just click whatever. But you have the forums, and I'm like, we're now actually practicing HR. Like, we're having to, so it's been like night and day. And at the risk of sounding like a bad person, I think it was a good thing. I think the good that has come out of COVID is greater than the evil that came out of it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My next question to you would be, do you think if COVID didn't happen, these changes would have happened? And I say that because I know a friend who used to work at Access Bank, and they would always tell their MD that we can work from home. This was a dev guy. We can always work from home. Our work doesn't require us to come in, and nobody was listening to them. And they were one of the people that were most hit when COVID happened, because you would call Access Bank Tech today. The person that answered the call last week has moved to Canada. The person that picked it up this week moves the next week. Do you think that if COVID didn't happen, this would have happened?
So I think COVID fast-tracked the process. Because if you look at the Nigerian market right now, we know that there's a lot of mobility in terms of JAPA. And when you're losing most of your key talents, you have to be very proactive and creative as to how do you retain those people and ensure that they do what they need to do. So even if COVID did not come, in the next 5 years, it was going to happen. But again, COVID was a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
And it prepared a lot of things in terms of talent management. You will see that a lot of companies that were very reluctant as to, remote work or flexibility became very open to it. It probably took time, but they got there. And I think for us as HR people, I can remember during my master's days and everybody was saying, HR needs to sit at the table. We need to be very strategic, blah, 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 quoting Dave Ulrich and the rest of it. And this thing became very visible when COVID happened. So as it is right now, I think that a large percentage of HR leaders have a seat on the table. And most times, we are the table because businesses need talents to survive.
Yeah.
So most times, you're thinking like 5 years ahead. What are the proactive policies that we need to take? So you're seeing HR managers thinking about when is the next school session for Canada, for UK? Who do we need to replace at that point in time?
Yeah.
Or what skills can we maybe convert to remote work or whatsoever?
Yeah.
But it gave us that opportunity to bring what we had on the table. And definitely for those who were not really agile, but agility, HR agility became the key. So yes, it did.
Thank you very much. I think a lot of people, still struggle with adopting these changes, even with technology that has come to help. I mean, Dole mentioned all the technology tools that you can then use to manage people remotely, but you see that some people still struggle. So my question is it because we know Nigerians? Like, we know our people, right? Yeah. If they tell you that they're working in their house, 80% of the time, you know, or people still see remote work as a benefit. I'm doing it for you. But do we think it's a necessity? And is it something we need to start changing our mindset towards in terms of how it affects our business and why we should really embrace and welcome it? Maybe you should speak since you have the mic.
Okay. So the first thing is not every role can be remote.
True.
The minute we know that, we have peace. There are some...
And the people in those roles can accept their fate.
Can accept their fate.
Because you can't be a receptionist and work from home. My point is...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you can't be the guy on the, the chain in the factory.
And work from home.
Or the police.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or, military. Work from home. So there are
Exactly.
just some, or a plumber. In fact, there are just a few roles. And our economy is hoisted by roles that at least 60%. There are different research that say 80 or whatever. And that the 20% of the workforce that can work remotely are the ones making more noise.
Noise, yes.
So remote work has come to stay for the ones that can happen. Now, let's focus on those people for a second. They're working in companies where they're being led by these leaders I spoke about, who maybe since COVID hit, we've been in panic mode. We've been in reactionary mode. We've been saying, people are leaving. They're in Japan. HR, start hiring. And HR is focusing on retaining talent. Sorry, I'm here to break it to you. There's nothing you can't do.
There's nothing.
You can't retain.
Yeah.
If you're going into 2024, planning retention strategies for your staff, just calm down. It's not working. What you should do is focus on how to get the most out of the ones that are there. Yeah. Even if it's for 10 seconds. Do they do what you're paying them for? Yeah. And then when they go, do you have a pipeline to get somebody in to do what they must do? So the strategies that we have, I just think we need to focus a little bit more on the realities that are and how we want to craft the future. Yeah. And we can't just sit and be passive.
I agree with you. I think a lot of us are not being realistic with what's really happening and, being creative with solutions that work for us. Every company would not have the same solution for their problems. So you're not going to go copy Jobberman because everybody is working remotely. You don't have the same kind of business. So it's also up to you as business owners to look at the workforce that you have, look at the business that you have, and find out what creatively can work for you. So my question for you is, I think she doesn't have a mic. My question for you is, I think we used to be very presenteeism focused. So people are in the office. And presenteeism used to count as work, effectiveness. Because you came to the office, you have done work. But I think remote work helped us to see that that's not really the case. What are your thoughts around, again, with the use of technology, I can take my phone to anywhere I'm going, right? But I've seen a lot of people complain that even with adopting technology, and she's answering her call in the market, she's taking her calls from the beach. What do you think, right? Do you think that that's technology enabling this person? Because we all have different demands that life puts on us. But because we were so used to you have to be in the office, a lot of things suffered in our lives. You couldn't go to your children's school event, but now I can go for my child's school event and still be working. But for some companies, you're not being productive because you've left your workstation or you're not working from home. Help me to balance that out.
Wow. I almost want to say I like the question that Elizabeth had. I feel like, that was so easy. But just speaking about it, again, touching on what Elizabeth had said earlier, it's a leadership issue. So I'll use myself. I love using examples. I love being, being very practical. I run a team of 12 people. because I am very remote focused, right? The only time that people actually come into work is on Mondays. It works for me. I actually can't do any more than that. If they were to come in any more times, we may actually kill ourselves, literally. But there's so much work that gets done, regardless. I think my focus has always been on output, right? I don't care when work gets done. I remember there's someone on my team, Ibuko. When Ibuko started, I'm calling these names so that you don't go and poach them. There's so many HR people here. I'm praying and speaking over you that you forget these names as I drop them. But when Ibuko started, she was only coming on Monday. At that time, COVID hadn't happened. So we used to come in, I think Monday to Wednesdays at the time. And I didn't care if she was up in the mornings. But with Ibuko at the time, if you wanted something delivered, she would work at night. When I wake up, it's done. So I'm not looking for her at 9 a.m. to say, are you sleeping? Why do you sound sleepy?
Yeah.
Why am I hearing noise in the background? I really cannot. I actually want to be left alone. I operate better when people trust me. I always say to people, if I ever micromanage you, then there's a problem.
Yeah.
Because I'm very lax in the way I manage people or I work with people. I trust that you know what you're doing, and I leave you to do that work. If you have a problem, I'm always here. I may be doing many other things, but I'm here. And we'll work on that together. So I think it's also a leadership problem. Now, in terms of going to the market, going to this, you want to be present. If we have deliverables and deadlines are tight, everyone knows you have to pitch in. Sometimes we've had things that we need to churn out, and we've worked till 11 p.m., 11 p.m., 12, but that's very rare. Recently, we had to work on a DEI presentation for a company in England, and we were on it till about 10. I started letting people drop off. But I also know that the next day I'm not expecting them to be on because we've already done the work. But that doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen all the time. And even I myself, I really want to live a very soft life while just delivering. My focus is on delivering. So if that is my perspective, then it's only fair that my team reflects that perspective.
Absolutely.
Our partner, just to round up, she wrote something on LinkedIn, Aniema, and she said, teams mirror their leader. And for me, I don't know if she was just telling me that, they're like me. And if I'm unserious, then they're I have no idea. But it's such a true thing because if you're a bit radical, then your team is radical. If you're open to remote work and everything that comes with, the current world of work, then your team will be. If you're a bit tight-fisted and you're like, no, everyone needs to come in regardless of their roles, and as Elizabeth has said, just so you watch them, then you will see your team leads being that way with the people who report to them. So it's really a leadership and perspective change. I think all leaders need to have like a perspective mindset change, and that's what when we see that, then we'll see work get a lot more enjoyable, peaceful, healthier, and productive, might I add.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please, a round of applause. They are dropping gems. Samantha, just speaking of what they've said, do we then think that organizations are doing enough to empower people to work hybrid and remotely? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. We underestimate the power of how long we've worked on site. Like all our lives, we've been working from the office. And boom, everyone has to work remotely. And we think that people know what to do, right? And we think that even hybrid and remote work works for everyone. It doesn't. There are people I know that don't like to work from home because their home conditions don't even allow them to be productive. They have children, they don't have a workspace, or they're squatting with friends. How can organizations then empower people to work remotely? I was talking to a client who I asked, what's in your onboarding box? Like, what are you giving people when they join? Have you thought about giving headsets to join meetings? Have you thought about giving desktop laptops to help, just empower people? And he's like, I cannot be doing all that for them. I'm like, but they don't come to the office where they have physical desk. They don't have access to internet anymore. You providing MiFi. People are not thinking about this thing. So please tell me, why are organizations not empowering? And if they're not, how do we encourage people to really empower people to be productive wherever they're working from?
So I think it's very crucial for organizations to support the remote work or hybrid work, irrespective of what the case is. But it's also essential that you provide them with the tools and facilities that they need to work remote. So as a business, are you giving them data stipend? Are you giving them MiFi as you mentioned? Do you even have like a tracking tool if they're working remotely? Do you have a collaboration tool? So back in the days when everybody was either using, just chat on Google, Outlook or whatever, these days you're seeing a lot of companies subscribing towards Slack. So with Slack, you have that opportunity to collaborate. So it's sending communications, interacting with your people, having like mini teams within your Slack group. So if businesses would look inward and see what they can use to support people, right? So are you trying to get your team members maybe a discount at a workstation? Do you want to provide them with solar whatsoever? Apart from the fact that you're giving them salary, do they know what is expected when they're working remotely? Do they have a checklist, right? So at Jobberman, we have a work from home checklist that we need to. Because at the end of the day, even if you're at home, you're still working. Do you have the right chairs? Do you have the right table? What is the sound system like around your area? Are you distracted? If you don't have 24 hours light or whatever, can you go somewhere else to work? But it's important that as much as we want them to work hybrid, we need to give them that sense of ownership. That's the entire system that would make it work for them. And I think finally, we also need to empower them. So when I'm saying empowerment, I'm talking about ownership. So gone are the days whereby people will come to the office and they've checked the box. You don't even check whether they're working. It's activity.
It's activity.
But right now, if you strive towards results, you would see that even your associate, like the entry-level person, would take their work very serious because they know that at the end of the day, it would contribute to their career. So if businesses can look at this thing from that standpoint, what can I give to people? It's also about well-being. And it's another way to actually get their loyalty.
Yeah.
So let them know that you're interested in their well-being. Let them know that there are facilities available that you can easily just access as regards to whatever.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for that point, please. I have 2 more questions before we go because they've cut our session half. So I'm going to fight your people. But we're going to talk about 2 very important things. Mental health. I think it's a culture that has also become very profound post-COVID. While I think a lot of it is, we're told, some people are just being dramatic, I think it's a real issue. Because there are people who actually have had to deal with a lot of, again, we don't know how COVID affected a lot of people mentally. And we're still having to carry on with work even after that. But a lot of companies don't take it seriously. They say, oh, these Gen Zs and their mental health. There's not only Gen Zs. There are millennials. There are people who are genuinely going through mental struggles, right? How can organizations, first of all, differentiate between when it's play, when it's people not being serious, and when it's actually something that they should deal with, and what can they do practically?
Okay, so this one is a very big table, and I think everybody in this room is sitting on it. We're all mental and emotional beings. So mental health applies to everybody. This is where there's ill health that it now becomes a thing. I find it very unfair and unjust that when there's talk of mental health, our leaning just goes to the younger generation, to Gen Z. And really, that's our trauma showing. Because the difference in the younger generation is just a little bit more vocal. They were born in times where there's this speak up. Exactly.
Because I used to holding it down.
We're used to holding it down and acting it out. Because we do act it out. Before they act it out, they talk. And because we're not used to talking, we act it out. We act our mental ill health out by saying, why are you talking? Just suck it up and, and move. But here's the thing. There's a lot of trauma walking about in leadership positions, in adulthood. There's a lot of unresolved, just let's take it and move on because this is what business is. This is what we know as business. Before it became a Gen Z thing, it will be we would say that, oh, it's because you studied in the UK. We don't do such in Nigeria. If someone comes to work, maybe they went for their masters and they're acting all white, yeah? You tell them, oh, yeah, can just do the work. These people are here complaining. So we can blame it on anything, generation, background, education, whatever. The responsibility that we have as people who are leading other people, doesn't matter your position, is to be intentional. If you are not intentional and you're not, actually, you wouldn't even recognize the fluff, because there is some fluff. Yeah, I'm not saying that everything is valid. There's some that just out of mental laziness. Some people don't want to do the extra hard work or whatever. But that laziness is not relegated to one generation. Yeah. The leaders we've been talking about who haven't taken time since 2020 to get better at leading and managing people, whether they see them or not. There's some laziness involved. Yeah. People are walking around with the frozen in time that we had to live with in Nigeria for like 9 months in COVID. And you come out and you have to start navigating. What do we do? How do I get promoted? How do I get my boss to notice that I'm alive and I'm well and I'm working and they should promote me? And we resort to all sorts of stuff. It doesn't mean that it's out of complaint. If you're a leader, you have to be consciously looking out for when someone's poor performance is as a result of some ill health. We're not checking. We just want them to get up and do the work in the way we think the work should be done.
Yeah.
Somebody can do something. Just focus on the results, like she said.
Yeah.
So what do you want them to do? Do we even know what the outcome should look like?
Yeah.
Or we're just conscious about how they should get it done.
Way. Yeah.
But we're not focused on what the actual outcome should be, and let them go and be creative and do it with whatever craziness. But if the outcome is coming, as long as the craziness doesn't come to another colleague, and you can draw the lines. We're not intentionally drawing lines. We're just painting things with paintbrushes that if you check, they're actually deeply rooted in unresolved trauma.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think it's a very valid conversation that we can continue to have outside of this place. I'm going to ask Tom my last question, but just asking Steph the last question for her as well would be, just speaking of this trauma, we've spoken to leaders a lot. I want us to speak to people who work in these organizations, right? Because there's a lot of us in this room who still work under those leaders. We're not leaders yet, but we work under leaders who are leading through trauma. And like she said, a lot of bad culture is from leaders who had bad leaders. So it's almost like we have a culture that's producing, after its kind. And so when those people own their businesses, they only do what they know. You hear bosses tell you, when we're in the bank 10 years ago, if you leave by 10 or 8, you're not a serious person. So they've carried that culture into their own businesses, right? So how do people deal with these kinds of places? Because what happens today is people have enough, they're just dropping their laptop and they're out the next day. They don't know how to have these conversations. We're not teaching our people how to open up, how to have these conversations, how to drive a bargain, or how they can, survive or even go, in those kinds of situations. Like, what would you advise people who work in those kinds of workplaces today to do? Sorry, I ask deep questions. I have a bad habit.
So I'll start from top down, right? I'm a firm believer of breaking the cycles. And I would say that my teammates know this. It's important that we also empower managers, right? Even if you worked in an environment whereby you had to work on Sundays, Saturdays, whatever, till 11 o'clock, don't bring it to where you're going to. It's important to also respect culture. Because culture, as much as we like to brush it down the carpet, it is a very powerful tool. And as leaders, it's important that we mirror that culture, and that goes down to our team. And then also, you have channels that people can report these situations to. So if you empower your leader to be very emotionally intelligent, you need to know your team. So you need to be able to pick at any point where there's something wrong. They don't need to tell you, but again, we're HR people, we're almost psychologists too. So you can almost tell when something is wrong with your team member. The moment you're unable to look at your team member in the eyes and you don't see that problem, there's something fundamentally wrong. And even as general, like as team members or associates, feel free to either open up to your managers or you go to HR or your HR BP. And I'm sure that these days companies are empowering their HR units, the HR BPs, to be open to receiving those feedbacks that they can take to management to change or update certain things. But it's also important that we let people know what, provide them with tools. Are you having a mental health week or whatever? But just provide them with tools to identify when they need a break or when they're about getting to that breaking point to escalate to their managers. And if they don't have that relationship with the managers, you know there's a problem. So you need to intervene in those situations. But as much as possible, it's important to keep a very open door policy. And I'm not saying open door as in literally, but it has to be open. It has to be an open door.
Your door has to really be open. To be honest.
But communication has to be very open.
Yeah.
Nobody, we're not children again. So it has to go that way.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. I think it's important that people know that they have a voice. It's important that they speak up when they feel like they're not getting the best. Because as much as organizations want to get the best out of people, people need to get the best out of organizations. It's always a two-way street. But I don't think we'll talk about it enough. We have this culture where employers think they're doing people a favor. And so it becomes a problem when the dynamic changes. Because now we're in a talent economy where people have a voice. If you don't have a remote work culture, I'm not working. If I talk to 10 candidates today, they're the ones asking me, is there remote work? What tools do they have? Are they giving me this benefit? If not, I'm not coming. I'm like, I hear me. So, and I like that. I really like it because I've always been pro-talent, which brings me to my last question for this panel. Sadly, we might have to go soon. One of the culture that we've had to deal with now, post-COVID, is gig work, side hustle. I know. So you have an employee. If I had a developer one time tell me he's working 5 jobs, I touched him like this. I said, are you all right? What do you think? Like for me, I have my thoughts, but I want to hear from you because employers are dealing with this every day. It's a reason why some people are either getting hired or not getting hired. And it's a conversation around, it's also one of the reasons why people are not adopting remote work because they're like, I don't know what they're doing. They might be working for 5 companies. They might be working for 2 companies. What are your thoughts? And how should employers be thinking about it? Is it a benefit? Can it be a benefit? Can there be an upside to people having a side hustle and doing their jobs? And what are the downsides and how can companies kind of manage this?
Wow, what a question.
I always give you the hard one,
I know,
sorry.
right? So I think it's clear that we're in a gig economy now. Again, I think I am very different as a boss or a leader. So I always feel like if you ask someone else, their answer may be very different from me. I actually think that my team, I support them having, I don't want to call it side hustles, but I support them. I've actually even told them openly in it, maybe from a different company, and that's something else. But, we're looking at, the world today, things are getting tougher in the world. And people are very diverse. There's so many things that people can do, because they have gifts and those gifts find expression, for instance. So it's tough to just put people in a bucket. Going back to, bosses saying, if you're at home, I'm not sure if you're working five roles. Again, I always say focus on output. If you get what you want, then does it matter?
They can be doing it with your internet.
Okay, that's the pain, doing it with your internet.
They can be doing it with your internet.
Literally, that's it. So, but I think that in terms of getting the most out of people, if you kill sides to people, then you don't get the best out of them. And I'm not talking about people that then do conflicting roles or conflicting jobs. That's different. If you're working for, jobber man, you should now then be working for jobber woman, for instance, because they're literally in the same field, same business, then it becomes a problem. But if you're working for the people practice, but you also perform or you're an MC, or you do, then it's different. It's like we're allowing different parts of your skill set to go. Because, for instance, in my case, I love writing. I write content. I write things on LinkedIn all the time. People are always asking me, do you want to manage my LinkedIn? That could be a side hustle.
Yeah.
For instance, if I wanted it to be, look, if you want me to do your LinkedIn, you can come to me. Just check me out. I'm quite good. I'm very relatable as well. But that could be, so I'm just imagining if that was someone on my team and they wanted to explore that, I would support them gladly. If someone was a musician, if someone wrote music, or if someone wrote poetry, if someone was writing a book on something, I think as we're getting to that place where you need to allow people's gifts find expression. They will respect you for it, they will thank you for it, and they will stay loyal to you for it, because at that point, for them, you are their best interest. They feel like you have their best interest at heart. So I always say I'm the wrong person to ask. In terms of gig economy, support your people as long as there are no conflict. I've actually had someone on my team come to me and say to me, someone reached out to them, what they've done for us, can they do it? I thought that was so
good.
I thought that was so
Yeah.
noble.
Yeah.
Of course, what do you think I told her to do? I said, do it and do it well. Do it well. Get paid, then take me out for lunch. She hasn't taken me out for lunch yet, though, but still. But just to tell you, that is something, and the fact that it shows sort of relationship we have at work where they can openly bring it to me and say it. Because they know I will support it. As long as you're not saying I'm going there to start recruiting or I'm going there to do OKRs, I'm like, on what mandate? Who sent you? That's different. But anything else, I'm your girl. I'm here to support you. I'm here to drive. Because at the end of it, I want you to leave this place and be better for it.
Yep,
across so many. They shouldn't say, she came from the people practice. She can't speak. She can't write. She can't. Learn everything you need to learn. So when you're in the future, I can say that's my person. I can always refer. But again, I'm different. Your boss may not say it. Just record what I've said. Play it for them loosely while they're walking across like a soundtrack. Hopefully it would.
Thank
would
you
sink
so
in.
much, Tom. A round of applause for her. A quick question. Do you agree with Tom? Yes or no? Samantha. Because you work, she owns a business, so I can understand her perspective. You work with a company. Would you understand? Would you agree with what she's saying?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm not speaking just for myself, but it's a company.
For Jobberman.
Yes.
Fantastic. Please, a round of applause for Jobberman. We'll send somebody there to be sure that, please give Elizabeth. Do you agree with...
Hey, how's
Elizabeth,
that?
don't preach. Just tell me if you agree or
See,
not.
I think it's in your best interest to allow this gig economy
Yeah.
because it will happen.
Yeah.
Whether
Regardless.
whether you know or not.
Yeah.
Stolen bread is sweet.
Wow.
When they're hiding and they're doing it, then they will go into conflict of interest roles.
Yeah.
And you'll find somebody who is the head of IT in your team being CTO in another company because they had to hide it.
Yeah.
And you'll find out in a way that's weird.
Yeah.
But if you allow it, just open up and you tell them,
Yeah.
go
Let's
get
have conversations.
You need more money.
Yeah.
Go and hustle. What skills do you have? Let's even help you figure out how to make money from your skills. They will go and do the photography or hair selling
Yeah.
or small chops making.
Yeah.
That's uses a different side of expression.
Yeah.
But if it's hidden and they are working, they have to be with you for all the time, they will lean towards the skills that they use.
Yeah.
And it will be the skills that they are working in your company with.
Thank you.
And you don't want
Unfortunately,
that.
we have to go, but thank you so much, guys. A round of applause. I think we're just going to round off by saying the workplace is changing, but a lot of people are still stuck in the past. They're still stuck in their ways. I think as employees, as employers, we need to start changing how we think about people, about the workplace, about how we engage people. Begin to think of your employees as partners in your business, as value adds, as people who are driving with you to where you are. It doesn't mean they don't have their own dreams. It doesn't mean they don't want to drive G-Wagon. It doesn't mean they want to grow as well. But if people come and partner with you to drive your business, the least you can do is also to empower them. So when they leave where they are, or when they leave where working with you, they're better for it. Let's create cultures that allow people to open up so people are not in conflicts of interest. Let's get the tools that allow our companies to, to monitor, to work even better in the remote and hybrid culture that we have. But most importantly, let's not be hypocritical. A lot of us have 3-4 businesses, right? But we want our employees to have only one, where we're paying them the little money that we have. So if we drive those conversations, allow people to open up and say, I have this complementary skill and I'm doing, because we need to learn to, let people sign if there's a conflict or not. So when we know what they're doing, it's easy we can even bring it into work. So if you do small jobs and we have an office party, can you do small jobs for the office? That person won't go anywhere. Do you understand? So it's better that we start to change our mindset towards work and towards how we engage and manage people better. Thank you so much for having us, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Please, let's put a round of applause for them. Give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. All right, so while they started the panel, our guest walked in. That is our commissioner. Now, he is the Commissioner of Innovation, Science, and Technology, Lagos State. His name, Olatubosun Alake. I'm hoping I got it correctly this time around. Thank you very much. All right, let's put a round of applause for him because he is going to be giving the keynote address at this time. Now, one thing you should know about him is that he is currently serving as the Honorable Commissioner for the Lagos State Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology with diverse experience in product management, business intelligence, and application development across telecoms, IT, and media entertainment industry. Now, he has a track record of managing and deploying enterprise applications. I mean, it goes a long way. His profile is really large. And let's just give him a round of applause right now as he walks up. Now, while this is going on, I noticed that a lot of people are on their phones. Kindly tweet using X, and also tag Business Day and People's Practice. Thank you very much. You can use the hashtags Business Day Conference and Talent Management. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the very kind introduction. When I was invited for this event, they told me I was going to give a keynote, and I was like, I'm really, number one, I'm camera shy. I'm not so used to standing in front of a lot of people, but because of my job, I've had to just try to train and kind of calm my nerves. So forgive me if I mess up a little bit, right? So, I mean, talent management, what can I say? It's synonymous with human management. And, talent, if we are talking about talent, we are really talking about people. For me, there's no shortcut to retaining talent. There is no shortcut to making sure that you grow your talent base. There are so many things. I mean, I could have come here and talk about different ways we can enhance the new working environment. Okay, use collaborative tools like Slack, Microsoft Teams, all the technology tools. But I really want to go to the heart of the matter. And I might speak from a macroeconomic level, but it also applies to each micro level as well, whether you are running an organization, whether you're an employee. But the fact that we all live in this place together, there are some things I think we should take cognizance of. And really, so I'm going to go off the cuff here. I don't really have prepared remarks, but I want it to be sort of like a conversation. So, I mean, since the dawn of modern economics, there have always been debates about what companies or countries deem as the most important resource. We know today that major conglomerates around the world are built around whatever they deem is the most important thing. So, for instance, there are oil companies, right? And they treat their mining licenses or their reserve licenses as their number one treasure, right? So once a petroleum company gets their either exploratory license or their extractive license, that becomes sort of their intellectual property. And so the company is built around that. So, this cuts across different industries, right? Even for the electric car industry, for instance, right? One of the key ingredients or one of the key components of driving the EV industry is lithium, right? And so what companies are doing now, EV companies, a lot of them are backward integrating, trying to look for lithium in different places. And so a lot of companies, they might tell you what their competitive advantage is. Maybe we have more lithium deposits than the next, so we can get our production line, quicker. We can deliver cars to people faster at a much more cost-effective rate. However, I think it's safe to say, and stats everywhere have shown that the single most important resource, whether in a company or in a nation, is people. It's people. And it is because of that fact is why most resource-rich nations are not the most prosperous, right? Because yes, we have all of the things we need. Since I was a kid, I've been hearing about the potential for Nigeria, right? And it's been potential, right? And there's everything, available. And so when people debate and say, oh yeah, this company, their single most important resource is their mining license, or is this? No, it's the people, right? It's the philosophy of the people, the value set, the objectives those people set, their tenacity, their dedication to drive towards that objective. It's people. You could have the most mining licenses, you could have, the best strategy, but if you do not have the people to implement it, then, there might be words on paper or they could be rough diamonds in the ground, right? And so the thing that any entity should build itself around is a strategy to always keep its talent. Or any nation, if a nation is losing its talent, there's a huge problem, right? And that's why I said, I will speak on macro terms, but I'll also dive down into micro terms as well. So the question is, how do we, as much as possible, keep and nurture talent in an age where talent is the most important resource and in an age where the world is smaller, right? Because of mobility, right? So talent will go where it's valued, right? And you cannot hope to keep that talent if you are not building things around that talent. Right? So what are some of the things that we can do, whether as companies, as a country, right? Or whatever entity, even in a home. What are the things we need to do to be able to keep the people that will drive value creation across any sector? Number one, education, right? For companies or countries that place a high emphasis on education, on training, stats show that more often than not, they have a 5% higher possibility of retaining that talent at the very minimum. At the very minimum. And so the percentage of your annual budget to education could be directly proportional, right, to your retention rates. And let me give an example. For instance, in Nigeria, let me use Nigeria as an example. The percentage of the education budget to the national budget, I think in 2019, 2020, was about 6-7%, right? The average spend on a child, maybe per year, was around maybe $100. But when you look at more developed countries, South Korea, Japan, the United States, the UK, even, smaller OECD countries, right? You are looking at ranges between 12, 15, sometimes 20, 25, right? And so the emphasis on education is that if you unleash that mind will change the country. Or that mind will change the direction of that company. So education is extremely important. If it is not prioritized, then there is very little that talent can do, right? It's like a rough diamond. You need to refine it. You need to smoothen it so that, at least the value is increased. So education in any sphere. And let me give an example why this education is very important. I'm going to give not a philosophical example, but a historical example. We all know about when Europe, there was a time in Europe's history called the Dark Ages, right? In the early 800s to about the years 1400, 1500. There was so much chaos, and then in the 1300s, something was invented. It was called the printing press, right? And that printing press first product was the Gutenberg Bible, right? And so since the printing press was now invented, people could actually now get their hands on things they could read. Education now started spreading. So when people started reading things like the Bible, different things, mindsets started changing. I said, no, we cannot do things like this. So we cannot. In fact, at that time, right, the Catholic Church had a practice called indulgences. I'm sure some of you must have heard about it. What that means is that if you have sins in your life, you go to the Holy Father, right? You confess those sins, and then you drop a token of money. And that token of money will speak for you, and your sins will be forgiven. So basically, you were buying your place into heaven. And that was a consistent practice in the Catholic Church for years. So people that didn't have money, what happened? They are going to hell. That's what that was saying. And so this was an exploitative measure in Europe for years. Until one man who had read the Bible to and fro, he said, no, he doesn't see something like, money is not the ingredient to enter eternal life. And so he nailed his 95 theses on the wall of the church. His name was Martin Luther. And those 95 theses he highlighted were the problem. This was now a released mind. He now nailed it on the door of the church and said, no, these are the issues I have. Because this practice is exploitative, is wrong, and is against human nature. And so that started what we call the Reformation. And that Reformation led to the Renaissance and all of that's where Europe's minds opened. And they started, people started doing things, the rights of man, this and that. People should be treated fairly. You can't do this, you can't do that. It was education, exposure, enlightenment. In all honesty, that is what this country needs. We are not as exposed as we think we are. And the population, right, that are not as exposed are the population you will get in your companies. Right? They will come with their value sets and their mindsets. And those are the people that work for you. And the results will show. So, education. And that's why a lot of companies invest a lot in training and retraining people. Because people come. I was in HR for many years. And I've interviewed thousands of people. And I can tell you one of the most important things a worker must have: values. The ladies were talking earlier about mindset. I'm telling you, it is critical. Very critical. The question is, what kind of value sets is our society instilling? And that has to do with education. So you can see it's not just technical education, right? You could have somebody that is very brilliant in machining, but it could be a very poor, it could be very poor at relationship management. It could be very nasty, and that might set your company back, right? I've seen where there were some CEOs that, yes, they had bright ideas, but because they were fighting with other CEOs, the whole company was held back. So, the board had to gather together and fire that CEO because the damage he was causing was too much. And what was the issue? It was a pride issue. He thought, there's no way that CEO can be talking to me like that. And the whole company was held back because of that. I'm speaking from personal experience. So, these things, they might seem esoteric, but they are very important. And let me delve. There are many other things, right? And it all goes back to values. Building an enabling environment, making sure that people are well respected, and all of that. But let me go back to these values-based education and value-based laws. If we look at China, for instance, right? And I give a lot of historical context because this is what has been proven and this is what has worked. In China, in the late, I think, 1950s, 1960s, there was a leader called Chairman Mao, right? And he designed a plan for the country called the Great Leap Forward, right? Everybody go to the farm. No matter who you are, just go to the farm, do what you need to do, produce food and everything. He completely stripped human rights laws. And if you read in history, if you Google the Great Leap Forward, it was one of the most disastrous things that ever happened to China. It set them back years. China, of course, was a great civilization over years. They built the Great Wall, so many things. Chairman Mao set them back. So in 1978-79, he died, and a new leader came, Deng Xiaoping. So Deng Xiaoping decided to look at the whole of Chinese society. And he said, look, what is really drawing us back is because we don't have some value sets. So what did he do? He started enacting value-based laws. So China's rise today is not just because they are, they produce everything, they have money. No, there are some principles that are guiding that production, right? One of the first things he did was to enact property rights and property laws and the rights of work. That, look, what a man works for, he must be rewarded for that work. Before, in the communist era, right, where ownership is collective. It's collective. So that means I don't own anything. So no matter how much effort I put in a thing, I can't own it. That in itself is not values-based. It means that consistently some people will be cheated. Because some people will work harder, some people will not work, but they will eat the same thing. Lie. It can't happen. Talent will never stay there. It will never stay there. So what he did was that, look, we have to treat people well. A person's effort must be proportional to their reward. So they loosened property rights. They enacted human rights laws. They increased their education budget. They strengthened corruption laws. They did so many things. And so if you look at the trajectory from 1979, when Chairman Mao died and a new leader, and he started enacting value-based laws, the economy just started going like this. And as time went on, and as they saw, they strengthened corruption laws. That, look, man, You can't just steal money and so the economy started going like this. And then entrepreneurs who before, whatever amount of work they did, the state collected it. They now say, okay, if I work, I'm going to get my reward. They now started. And then it's Chinese entrepreneurs that changed the nation. It's Chinese entrepreneurs. So all the companies you see today, whether it's Tencent, right, which is one of the biggest tech companies in the world, whether it's DJI, the drone company, all our drones is mostly DJI. They make the best drones. It's a Chinese company. Right? And so you can think of so many other, China, they make most things, most of the designers, everything, the clothes from Zara to H&M, everything is Chinese. Well, they are entrepreneurs because the entrepreneurs saw that, okay, my work is going to be rewarded. My intellectual property is protected, right? I'm not going to go out and some person is just going to come and appropriate my work. So I will stay and I will build. So the question is, what kinds of value sets, what kinds of environment are we creating to keep talent? So as you can see, it applies to countries, it applies to companies, it applies to the home as well. Right? And so, I thought when I was coming here, I thought, okay, fine, I could mention all the technological tools that can make people work remotely, right? But talent will go to where it is most accepted, where it is fair, right? Where there are values, where its family will be protected. A lot of people that move to Canada, they say, oh, it's because of my family. When there's even uncertainty, you don't know that what's going to happen because of your children in the future. So you will go to a place where there is a level of certainty, at least to an extent. There's got to be consistency. What you say must be what you mean. Right? And the truth of the matter is that we are all part of the problem. If our environment does not coincide with what we truly say or what we say, then it means that what we say is not truly what we believe. And I'm going to say some very controversial things. And if you permit me, you understand. Because the most important resource anywhere is talent, is the people. And if you lose the people, then you are losing the plot. So, I had mentioned earlier about the European example, that when people started reading, right? When people started reading about, for instance, Martin Luther, when he read the Bible and saw that this exploitative practice is not correct, right? There were changes in different societies in Europe. And those changes, they were bottom-up changes. And they all went until they started electing good leaders. That's the way change will happen here. And I'll tell you why. A lot of people say leaders is the leaders. I argue with you that is the mentality of the people. And I'll tell you why it's not the leaders. Because you could get a good leader today. And if that good leader leaves, another leader that might be crazy might come and he would destroy everything the previous leader did. However, if your people have a mentality, right? If they all have a values-based mentality, then whoever you elect from that set will continue with that values-based mentality. True change always comes from the bottom up, not the top down. And that's why in Europe, when things were changing, when people started reading, they started getting exposed, they started seeing that, the way I'm behaving is not the way I should be behaving. Then the leadership cadres of the European countries started getting affected. Because let me give you an example. If you go to a store, say you want to buy plantain, for instance, right? You go to a plantain ladies shop. You pick a set of plantain. You get home. Say its thing does not show from the outside. You cut the plantain up and it's rotting on the inside, right? I say, man, this plantain is rotting. You know what? Tomorrow I'm going to go there. I'm going to look very well and pick a very good plantain. So you go there, you look. You pick a plantain. You get home, you cut it open, and it's still bad. You say, okay, you know what? This third time, I will use my glasses. And I'll check very well. I'll enter that thing. And so he enters. The guy enters on third day in a row. He goes, he takes the plantain. He gets home, he cuts it, and it's bad. No. What is the probability that all of the plantain there is bad? The probability is very high. So he's probably going to say, madam, you have to check the plantain you bought from the market too. Because there's a probability. I've taken 3 plantains in a row and 3 of them are bad. It means that set of plantain, the probability, I mean it's mathematics now, the probability that whole set is bad. So if consistently the environment in a place is consistently bad and you've had different leaders and it's still bad, then you must look at the whole set. There's something wrong there. There's something wrong. That is why true change is from the bottom up. Is when people have a mentality and they demand for that mentality. That's when things will move. And so whoever you vote from the set, right, has the mentality of the set of people, and then you know. So what we are getting, right, what we are getting today might seem, or what we are tolerating, right, it might mean that we still need a change of mentality across board. Some people might have the right mentality, but it might not be a critical mass. And so, ladies and gentlemen, from my diatribe today, it would seem that the most important thing for talent management in an age of mobility is mindset and values. Is mindset and values. I mean, all the collaborative tools are there in the technology ecosystem. You could implement as much as possible. But I've seen companies where people stay, not because they make the most money, but because the environment is there's just sanity. There is just sanity, there's predictability, there's safety, and it's just healthy. As opposed to a place where you are making money. Some people might want adrenaline rush, but you can't sustain it for long. Yeah, some people might want a topsy-turvy environment. Yes, we do this, we do that. But you see, the nature of adrenaline is that it's only for a short time. There is a crash after. So, all of the value sets that will create the environment that will keep our talent here, we need to look at ourselves very well. Are we implementing it? And I'll tell you some of them. Of delayed gratification. Right? Look, even countries that drive research and development, people that invent new things, that are always doing R&D, is delayed gratification. It's not that I will get my return in 2 years. No, it's delayed gratification. Look, the COVID vaccine that was invented, since when they have been doing the research, the mRNA strand, it's research that has been going on since the 1960s, right? By the National Institutes of Health in the US, where they consistently fund R&D initiatives, right? And then a private company in the 1970s called Genentech, right, who was one of the pioneers of the mRNA vaccine. They were doing research on it. It materialized only in the late 90s. And from the 90s, it took another, 2 decades for us to fashion out that kind of mRNA vaccine that was used in Pfizer, the BioNTech vaccine, in Moderna, and all of that. They started the work since the 1960s. And so if you think you have an instant gratification mentality, you are not going to move forward. It's not future-proof. Delayed gratification is something you require for the future if you are ever going to move. And it's something that must also be instilled in people for them to build businesses that will transcend generations. Right? Another value tenet, power distance index. Right? The rate at which people tolerate inequality. Even in companies, it happens. That's why a CEO can make 55 times what the lowest is making. Look, all of these things is based on values. Everything. You understand? And that's why the value has just been going down. That's why CEO to worker pay has been going up. When conglomerates and things started first being built, it wasn't like that. There was a sense of camaraderie, right? Oh, this is where we are going. We are all in it together. Not just shareholder value. People actually wanted to build things and carry people along. Right? And I can go on, but we don't have the time. So with these few words of mine, I hope I've been able to convince and not to confuse you. Thank you very much.
All right, I would like you to take pictures right now. All right, thank you very much. Now, as he was speaking, I'm hoping that you heard the gems that he dropped. I mean, there was a whole lot, but I picked out a few. He mentioned that one thing a job seeker must have happens to be values. And if you're not tweeting that, I do not know what you're doing right now. All right, while you're listening, do well to, press your phones, go ahead, go on to Facebook, Instagram, all of that, and tweet about all of this. And don't forget to use the hashtag Business Day Conference, hashtag Talent Management 2023. All right, now while that is going on, I also have to be part of that picture, just saying, Can I join now? Thank you. All right, can the sponsors please come up? Seamless HR, Leadroyd, and Jobberman. Representatives from those companies, thank you very much. And thank you for sponsoring once again. We do appreciate it. All right, can you give another round of applause? Thank you. Thank you very much. I know when we started, I did mention that you should move forward. So please, if you have any empty seats in front of you, kindly fill them. Thank you very much. I know you can hear me. Even if you're pretending not to right now, I'm looking at you in the eyes. Kindly move forward. Thank you. There are seats in front of you that has not been taken. Also, I would like to tell you to silence your phones while he was giving the address. I noticed that some phones were not on silent. Thank you very much as you do that. Now, I'd like to introduce the next panel going up. Now, this panel, they're going to be talking about talent management in an age of high mobility. And the moderator for this particular panel is Anyema Udefe. I'm sorry if I scattered that name. I apologize. Please, can you give her a round of applause? Thank you very much. Now, one thing you should know about her is that she's a dedicated HR professional, and she brings diverse industry experience and proven skills in crisis management, employee benefits, recruitment, training, and talent management. Please, let's give her another round of applause. All right, let's welcome our panelists right now. First off, we'll start with Uche Lotana. Let me pause there because I'm about to bite my mouth. Please, let's welcome Uche Lotana. Please, you tell me the pronunciation of your name so that I do not spoil it. I do not enjoy my name being spoiled, so I would like not to do that. Anna Jemba. Thank you. Please give her a round of applause. All right, now she is a seasoned professional with 22-year career service as a leading voice in the knowledge space, and currently managing human capital at Seplat Energy. Now, she focuses on diversity and inclusion strategies for high performance. She's also the founder of Classroom to Boardroom, CR2BR, an impactful employability workshop, bringing the gap between classroom teachings and workspace skills application. Please, let's give her another round of applause. Now we're going to welcome our second panelist for today. Her name is Gbemisola Ojerinde, and she's the managing director, Leadroyd Realty. Please put a round of applause for her. Thank you. Now, she's the MD of Leadroyd Realty Limited. She's a dynamic leader, reshaping Nigeria's real estate, known for integrity, and she also pioneers affordable housing with flexible payment structures, revolutionizing off-plan property deliveries as well. Please, let's give her another round of applause. Let's also welcome our final panelist for today, for this second panel. Her name is Moyo, oh my goodness, I apologize. Moyowa, and she is a dynamic HR and legal professional, currently leading people's operations at Seamless HR. Now, let me let you in on a secret, in case you do not know this. There are lots of HRs here, and now if you know someone that needs a job, collect their numbers. All right, I'm going to let you carry on. Thank you very much. Please put a round of applause for them.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello. Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this conversation. We look to have as much gain as much learning as we can from just sitting down here and milking this conversation. Talent mobility, talent management in these times is something that's before us, right? And we can't run away from it. There is no running away from the fact that the talents that we currently manage, they are out of our grasp because they are highly mobile. It's either jackpot happens, and if jackpot doesn't happen, they will stay in the country and bounce around like balls from one organization to another. So the onus is on us to decide, how best to manage them, especially for the time that we have them for. The first panel talked about making best use of the time that they spend with you, and that's what this conversation is pretty much going to be about. We're going to help business owners, business leaders gain insight about how to manage their people in contemporary times. I'll let you all give your opening speeches just for a few minutes before we get into the meat of the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks for having me here. I'm definitely excited to just share some insights and also learn from the rest of the great minds on the panel and in the audience. I think it's topical. We need to learn how to manage our employees in this age, or our businesses will suffer. So there are lots of things we'll share, and I hope we have fun with it, like the last panel did. So I'm excited for that. Thank you.
Thanks for having me here today, and hello everyone. So when we talk about talent management, I think the initial thoughts are, what exactly is talent management? Because sometimes we throw these words out there and people don't really understand what it means, particularly if you're not an industry, you're not in that discipline. And it's simply just strategic attraction, strategically developing these people, and strategically retaining them, right? So the end-to-end process of finding good people, developing them, and keeping them. And I like the fact that you said that mobility is not just about exiting the country, it's actually bouncing around from one organization to the other. So I think for me, a question I want us to have at the back of our mind is, as entrepreneurs, business owners, and as HR professionals, is there actually anything wrong with mobility? I think if we just stop there for a second and think about that, then it might shape the conversation. And the reason I say that is because if you look at the climb 8, right? If you look at the evolving world of work, you have many things to contend with. You have technological advancements, you have entrepreneurship, you have shifting values where people are no longer commercially focused, but are focused on social impact. You have people wondering about work-life integration. So when you put all of these 4 factors, right, and then you're dealing with someone who is in this time and space, the chances that you can keep them in one place becomes increasingly very difficult. So are we actually fighting something that is inevitable? For me, it's where I want us to, one of the areas I would like us to explore as we talk about mobility in these times and seasons.
Before you speak, please, Gbemisola, what you've just said is so profound, and I can relate it to something that was said by the last panel as well. The times have changed, but we're still trying to manage people the old way. Go ahead, Gbemisola.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. So I will just ride on what she had said. Definitely, I wouldn't say something is really wrong about talent mobility. At least it has come to stay, whether we like it, even as, okay?
Please try this one. Can you speak up a bit more? Can you try
okay.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Thank you. So I would say that talent mobility has actually come to stay, and it's the reality of the time and age we are in right now. And I believe that we are going to have a lot of discussions that is going to enlighten us. And then we'll be able to, through different perspective, because I'm a business owner, so my perspective may not be directly the same as yours, but I'm sure that by the end of this panel, we'll all be able to learn. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gbemisola. I was particularly excited to see that, it's not just us HR people from different perspectives flogging the same subject. We have a business owner on the panel. That adds flavor to what we'll be talking about. So I would ask the first question to Muyiwa. So as HR leaders, right, how can we tailor our talent management strategies, to be in harmony, to be in sync with the business overall strategy?
Okay. So I think, where did you get your talent management strategies from? I think they should be built on the business goals to start with.
Yes.
I don't think we should be trying to align it afterwards. And, even as HR leaders, it just goes to the mindset shift. And the first panel spoke about it, earlier. It's just to say, you are supposed to be a business leader. You're supposed to drive the business. So your strategies has to come from you sitting down first of all saying, let me understand where the business is going to. So that way you can even recommend, and your strategies come after. We say we want a seat at the table, but sometimes, they get us on the table as a DEIB, element, and you sit on the edge of it because you don't actually have anything to say. But really, what you need to do is understand the business. Know where the business is going to, know how we get our numbers done. You manage the most important resource that drives that business. So if you don't get the business right first, you have no business creating strategies, to even people strategies. That comes after. So I think as HR leaders, my first point is understand the business and then build your strategies based on that. Don't try and align afterwards. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
That's so good. I mean, what you've just said now is so profound, because it automatically secures that seat on the table, right? It shouldn't be a place you're trying to grasp or
Exactly.
grapple for. It should be designated. It should be created for the HR lead, the people lead, so that they're not trying to fight for the space. They're not coming after the fact. They are part of the decision-making process that results in the creation of the business strategy. That's so profound.
100%.
What do you think, Uche?
I mean, she couldn't have said it any better.
Mm-hmm.
How do you align to something that you were not part of in the first instance? I think over the last, maybe in the early days of HR, there was a misconception that HR people were not technical. So when I mean technical as in understanding the particular businesses that they were serving. And this perception may have happened, rightly so, because I remember in the early days when I used to be outside of HR, I would have a conversation with, so I used to be on the field, I used to be in commercial operations. And then you have conversations with the people that are doing HR and they will say, oh, I don't understand what you guys do. I just created a policy. So when a HR professional says this, makes a statement like that, you sort of reinforce the stereotype that you don't understand the business. You're pretty much copying and pasting a policy, a procedure, a strategy for your organization that does not actually align to what the company is trying to do. And I think that's where the HR business partnering model becomes very strong and very valuable to organizations, because for you to be a business partner, as the name suggests, you have to understand the business that you're partnering in. So you first start with understanding the business before you can then create any strategy to support that business. As a matter of fact, in some organizations, you can't actually be a business partner except you've actually walked the line or the discipline, because they know that you're a subject matter expert and therefore can customize to what they're trying to do. So HR cannot be aligning to something it does not understand. You have to be part of crafting that strategy from the very beginning, because it's people that deliver on ideas and concepts and projects and strategic goals and initiatives from day one.
All right. Thank you so much. You bring such beautiful perspectives to the conversation. So moving on now to culture, Gbemisola, I would just like to ask you, and I mean, going by the fact that you're a business leader as an MD of Leadroit, right? So how can a business create culture, right, that ensures as much as possible, because I mean, there are other variables that can alter the outcomes of this, right? How can a business culture be designed to ensure long-term commitment, right?
Oh, okay. So I will start by saying this. For individuals, we get to take what we get to perceive differently what keeps us in business. So if you're working for an organization, I think the commissioner during his speech, he said something.
Yeah.
What keeps you? What cuts it for you? Is it just about the money? Is it just about the income? Or is there other things that you hold in value, that will make you to actually stay with an organization and continue to grow with it? So I think that for human resources people and then business partner in human resources, I would say that it starts with understanding the organization. Understand the organization, and I'll tell you, as business owner, you don't start your business by employing HR. You don't start with it.
Okay.
You nurture the vision, the mission, and then you start grooming it. So it is when you now decide that, oh, there is need for talent, to recruit talent, that is when you speak to an HR. So it will take you a period of time to get the HR or HRBP to understand even the vision, to be able to fashion the right set of people, the right set of talent to work with you. So if you start by getting that right, I think that it will go a long way in helping you to get talent that you can retain. And we're talking about mobility. I'm not sure that, and that's why I started by saying it's individual thing, depending on the talent. And in some cases, no matter how much you offer, sometimes, for some reasons, whether personal or for some reasons, the person might decide that, okay, I think I don't want to be here anymore. But now, critically looking at it, how do we intentionally do things that can help retain talent? So I think that we need to get as personal as possible with our talent. We need to understand we need to understand what would be like their 5 years plan, where they would like to be in the next year, in the coming year, and work with them. It's not just about their deliverables now. So, and you need to also look at your talent and see that, okay, this person function in this role. Is this person happy with this role? There's something about job satisfaction. No matter how much you're paying me, if I'm not satisfied with the job, I can resign. So you need to also ensure that the right person is sitting on the right job, is doing the right job that is fit for that person's personality or the person enjoys doing. And also it comes to the figure also. How well are you paying them? It's also something we need to critically look at. Are you paying them well enough? That's something. Are they working? Are they doing the job they would like to? Like, it's possible that I'm being employed after interview, and then you employ me to be XYZ in your company, maybe as an HR person. And then when you join, I discover that you actually have some other talent that you can even function better instead of the HR. So maybe the role we are trying to fix at that time is HR. So we brought you in as HR. But over the years or over time, we discovered that this person will be a better salesperson. This person will be a better admin person. Why not re-interview that person, re-engage the person, and see whether that person will be comfortable to move to another role. And with that, it will show that you have them in consideration, and then they can grow with you. Everybody wants where they can grow.
True.
Everybody they want where they can express themselves. So as much as you give them room, the better for you, and the more possible you can retain them.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So for the HR people in the room, I'll draw out the key points, the salient points that you have shared, right? Know the business, right? Determine individual skills so that you can determine what job satisfaction means from person to person. That's a lot of work, HR. And then reward appropriately, right? That's my summary of what you have said. So I would drill a little bit deeper into the point of rewarding, right? Uche, what do you think? And this question, I'll move back to everybody. What is the most valued benefit for people today, right? I know there was an age where you say, okay, make sure the salary is really fat, right? But people are beginning to realize that money is not the only thing people are looking out for when they're talking about work benefits and satisfaction. What else is a major currency as far as benefits for employees concerned today?
Okay, so that's a 2-in-1 question. What's the most beneficial, and what else? So typically, what you find with every single scenario in life is that human beings, it depends on where you are in your stage of life. So if you look at the Maslow's theory, right? I'm sure most HR people or most people know the Maslow's theory. It starts at the bottom, right? So at the bottom of the triangle, at the pyramid, is your basic needs: food, clothing, shelter. So if you even extrapolate that to business, and you're doing a business where it's food, clothing, shelter, you'll be fine, right? And that's why you find that in times of crisis, like during COVID, people were worrying about toilet roll. People were worrying about basic survival.
Yeah.
Nobody was worrying about smart ideas and strategy. We just need to survive. Yeah. And then as you start to go up, the needs start to change, right? Social belonging, aspiration, things like that. So when it comes to benefits, the question would be, what is the demographics of your organization? Let's start there. If you have a very young population, right, a young workforce, they are looking at, quite frankly, right now, not even money. They're looking at work-life integration. They're looking at flexibility. They'll take less money and do less work to have their own time to do their own personal aspirations that have nothing to do with the traditional way that some of us knew how to work. Do you see? So it depends on who you're looking at. It depends on the demographics. As people now get older in their career or older, maybe they're at the birthing stage, they have children, their priorities will change. They're looking at their children. They're looking at, better life for their families. So at that stage, they might be more focused on money. That becomes more beneficial to them. But when they go up the ladder, right, much at the top of the ladder, they've made some money over the course of their career. They have investments, and they've also seen that money is not it all. They start to look for different things. So I've seen people leave 6-figure jobs to go work in a spa, and it doesn't make sense, or it won't make sense to somebody else. But they're like, look, by the time they've ended up in hospital for months on end, dealing with stress-related issues, right now, being alive is more important to them than that money. It is more important to them at that money. So it's hard to say that there's one thing that is the most beneficial. It depends on your demographics, and depends on you and the stage you are in your life. I've had seasons in my life where I worked for peanuts, but those organizations give me a chance at management, so I could do multiple things in that organization. I remember in one particular place, I worked as HR. I was in charge of local content. I was head of brands and communication. I was in charge of everything that was non-technical. So when you work in smaller organizations, right, you have the liberty, you have the opportunity, to do that, to do many things, because they don't have the money to hire many different people. So at those seasons in your life, you're going to be earning the salary of one person doing the work of 5 people. But you have to know where you're going and why you're doing that. Because fast forward to when you then sit at a panel somewhere else, you beat everybody else because you have a wide range of experience. Do you see? So at that stage, when you were earning peanuts, I remember someone asking me, were you jazzed? Did they jazz you, or are you related to them? And I said, I don't know them from anywhere, but I know why I'm doing this, because I'm looking for something, and I need to do this to be able to catapult myself to where I'm headed. Do you see? At that stage, money was not important to me. Opportunities for career growth and progression was more important to me. So I always say to people, every time they want to do a career transition, change of job, I ask them, be true to yourself. What are you looking for? Are you looking for money? If you're looking for money, please don't go here, and here, because they're not going to pay you and you're going to be frustrated. But are you looking to get your hands dirty and for an opportunity to learn and grow, then go here. But there's also a recent survey, I think it was done a few years ago. I think it was published by a company called MindFlash. So they usually aggregate data from different organizations. And there was a table, and they said what employers think people want. And employers put money at the top and listed other benefits. But the survey actually showed that money came in 5th place. 5th place. And this was a survey across a wide demographics of people. So to the second part of your question, money is important, but it's not the most important, as that survey suggests. But what else is important? People want a place where they have opportunities to learn and to grow. People want a place where they have opportunities to learn and to grow. A place where they are seen, where the work that they do is meaningful work. If you even look at the SDG goals, I think SDG 8 or so tells you about meaningful work.
True.
So there's such a thing as useless work.
True.
And some organizations are very good at that. You can't see how this adds to the bottom line.
Yes.
Or they've not shown them how this adds to the bottom line. So the person doing that will constantly be demotivated and not give you their best, and then they will move. Coming back to the topic, mobility. So people sometimes move not because of the money, but because they are not stretched and they are not challenged. Secondly, people are starting to look at your healthcare medical benefits because of the state of our health facilities in this country. So some people have stayed in jobs because I have a family, the HMO plan is good and robust. If my children are sick, they will be well taken care of. If something were to happen to me, I'll be well taken care of. And they stayed there for that reason. So that's another benefit, right? People also stay in places where they have opportunities for career growth and progression. So a big organization where you have multiple subsidiaries or multiple locations in and outside of the country. So they know that it will give them geographic mobility. So if I work here today, I can move to a different department. So my husband stayed in one company for 15 years. I'm a product of mobility, as you can tell. But my husband stayed in one company for 15 years, and I used to look at him and say, how are you able to do that? But it was an organization that allowed him, in the 15 years, he worked in about 6 locations, doing about maybe 7 or 8 different roles. So each move felt like a different company. Now, smaller organizations, you don't have the flexibility to do that because there's only so much work. But sometimes people stay in a big organization because it allows them to do that. So that's another benefit. People also stay in places, or a benefit that is very vital now is work-life integration. Now, you have a lot of companies that are starting to understand the importance of entrepreneurship. So if you have someone who is very visionary, very creative, and you're trying to box them into a particular role, they're going to get frustrated no matter how much you pay them. So organizations like LinkedIn, right? They have something called incubator that allows you to develop your own idea while working for the organization. Organizations like Meta do hackathons for their employees. The company that does Post-its, I think it's called 3M. 3M and Post-it actually was an idea by somebody in the organization who was allowed the time. I think you're allowed 15% of your time to do whatever it is you like. Facebook, no, it's not Facebook. Google allows you 20% of your time to do any project, and some of their best. I think Gmail came from one of those initiatives. So if you look at now the changing face of work, where people are no longer interested in your traditional way of doing work, people are very entrepreneurial, especially in our climate. Because of our economic realities, it's very difficult for you to sustain on one income. So people now have multiple side gigs because they're trying to make the ends meet. So if you then have an organization where entrepreneurship is allowed, right, and it's some kind of a benefit, you will find that people are motivated, switched on, engaged, and they'll go over and above for you, and it's an indirect benefit. I work here because I'm allowed to use the company resources, obviously within reason and control, to develop my own initiative. That's another key benefit that can keep people. And then bonuses are very important too. Long-term incentive plans, bonuses, the golden handcuffs. So if you stay 5 years, X amount of money is released. People would say, okay, I'm going to stay 5 years. But what happens is that in that 5 years that they are there, if you're given exciting projects to work on, they are likely to say, let me give it another 5 years and see. And then you have people staying. So these are some of the things that I would say companies should do.
Wow. Thank you so much, Uche. You have unpacked and unpacked and unpacked. You know, but summarizing what you've just said now, I just say to myself that benefit is not a static concept, you know, and that's where putting on your thinking caps as HR people comes in. You have to constantly think, rejig it, try new things. You know, you may be working somewhere else, you may want to copy, you want to tailor it to yourself, but keep thinking about it and trying new ways. Moyowa, what's your thought?
I mean, I think she just gave us a masterclass,
True,
you know. But, you know, to touch on a few things she mentioned, I know we talk about mobility, and in this day and age, we talk about it from the angle of relocation. But internal mobility is a game changer. If your company can adopt it, you know, that's what helps the employees a lot. I'm a product of internal mobility. It changed my life, and I've done it, like worked in a large organization, changed jobs a few times, learned robust. I was able to work with executive management, the most mind-blowing stuff. And just cross-functional collaboration, get them on projects, working across teams, reward them, like she said, bonuses. I remember very young, like in my career, you know, I got flown to Singapore as a reward for a project that I worked on with people from all across the business. And I flew with the CEO. It was fantastic, mind-blowing. Things like that should form some type of benefits. So, you know, and internal mobility, I think, is a game changer. 100%, if your company can adopt that, is one of the ways that your company can, you know, really develop talent. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. So Gbemisola, let me come to you now, right? And I'll be asking about upskilling people, right? For us as human resource people, we see that upskilling people, I mean, by upskilling now, I mean training, education, as the commissioner put it, right? Educating people is investment. So in these types of environment, in this contemporary time, right? In a high mobility environment, how do you think that, you know, you can get the maximum return on investments when you train your people, especially considering mobility?
Okay. So, I think that the investment by training and educating your talent,
Yes.
I think it's actually for your own good. It's very important that, like you do onboarding, when people join your organization, so you do like a form of induction. You let them know what your organization culture looks like. You let them know your vision, your mission, your core values and all that. That is part of education. Okay? So, and that is in-house for the organization itself. And speaking specifically to the role each talent is playing, it's very important that you train them. I think you are doing yourself a good favor. So if you look at it from the perspective that, so after training you, after sending you abroad, or after training you, so maybe you even send someone abroad for a training and the person doesn't come back. I've seen it happen in organization. Yes, and they don't return. Or you send them for trainings, and with that, it adds to their CV. Immediately after they come back from that training, they add it to their CV, and they're applying for the next job. Okay, and someone sees it, you have this training, why not come and work with us? So you look at it, if you look at it from the disadvantage perspective that, okay, if I train you, if you have this certification, okay, you may jump ship. But that would eventually happen, okay? Like they say that soldier come, soldier go, right? It will eventually happen. So if you have the fear and worry that, this person would leave, I'm not sure that you want to invest in your talent. And if you don't invest in them, you don't get the best out of them. You can start from, it can be as little as them doing online courses. It can be like sending them on. You can even invite people to come into your office to train them. It can be as little as that. And then if you want to look at, the figure involved in training them, and you want to juxtapose it to the return that you will get, I think that it's a good business. It's actually a very good, a rewarding business. If you send someone to schools like Lagos Business School, go and train, the person come back different. When I was working in an organization, I had several trainings at the Lagos Business School, and then anytime I come back, I come with a lot of things filled in my head, and I keep having meetings. Can we do? They say, calm down, calm down. I want to do more. I want to implement all those things I've learned in the training. So looking at it now from the perspective of a business owner, I think that it's a fantastic investment. And every business owner and human resources personnel should encourage trainings. It's very important. It's a good reward. You have a good reward at the end of the day.
All right. So upskilling people is good for business, right? And then Tomo also said something that sort of buttresses what you have said now. She mentioned that when people leave your organization, how do they look? Do they look like they've been to hell and they're back, or they look like they went somewhere that improved them, right? So when you upskill people and they come out of your organization, they're ambassadors of your business, and they should look like they've been to a good place, Okay. So
Can I just add something there?
Yes, please go ahead, Moyo.
At Seamless, we have something we say where the people we hire today, we have to upskill them for them to take us to where we're going to. So if you say you want, upskill your people, you'll be struggling with people who can't perform for your future.
Yeah.
They can't help you get to where you need to be. So upskilling is so that you have the right people for the right goals, your future goals.
So it's more about you.
It can also be about you.
Yes.
So if you think about it from a business perspective, you're doing it for you.
Yes.
Because either way, they're not going to be able to perform. If you're saying AI today and your people are like, what? In full, tell me what does it mean? They don't know anything. How are they supposed to help you? Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much for driving that in like that. So coming from the technology side, technology is upon us. It seemed like a distant reality, but it's now a thing here in Nigeria. People are talking about collaborating tools and all of those things. So how can people leverage technology to manage people?
Are you using Seamless HR?
Why did I know you
Shameless
jump on
plug.
that?
Definitely use a great HR software. That's the first step. if you're not using a HR software today, it's like, what are you even doing? It's difficult for you as a business. You're not able to scale your people, team. They're not able to operate properly. And if you have a hybrid team or you have a fully remote team, that's the only way to properly manage them. If you're operating with email, so much gets lost. That's the reality of things. You need to leverage technology. It makes it easier to track, even if we're talking about performance. How do you manage performance for a team scattered all across the world without a proper HR software? So please, use Sona's HR. But beyond that, there's AI now. Generative AI, in the HR space is critical going into next year. How do we leverage that as, employees and for the business? Without that, you're going to be operating like in the slowest form ever. There's a McKinsey study I read, and it said, agile, like you need speed. Because the competition that's coming with the economy we have now, if you're operating in a slow form and you're still trying to figure out things, it's not going to work. People are leveraging technology for speed, and they're moving really fast.
Really good. Thank you so much. So riding on what you have just said now and the use of technology will lead me to my next question that comes to you, Uche. Right. So what key metrics should people be looking out for, right? So when you use AI to manage people, what outputs, what should you be deriving from, using your HRISs and all of that, and how should you then translate them to people management?
Okay, I think it's more if we have mobility and we have people now working across regions, we then as business owners and as HR practitioners, we need to come away from presence-focused matrices to performance-driven matrices. So what did you do? Not how many times did I see you? But in Nigeria or in African countries, we're very relational people, right? We like to see you, feel you, touch you. True. We do. It's like I had an MD who would always say, you deliver a piece of work and you say, I'm not feeling you. I was like, what does that even mean? Like, I just sent you the work. Have you looked at it? He said, no, it's different if you're standing in front of me and telling me about it. I need to feel you. Can you come in? I'm like, oh, Lord. Who understands what I'm saying? Yes. So that's why a lot of business owners are struggling with this whole concept of remote working and mobility. But we have to embrace it, right? And we have to find other ways to measure. And that's where technology comes in, because it allows us some collaborative tools that we can use. So what are you going to be measuring, right? You're going to be measuring generally in this mobile world that we live in now, you have to be measuring performance. So you have to have real matrices like mean time to resolution. You have to be measuring the quality of the output. How many corrections did you have to make? How many customer complaints did you have to treat as a result of this? Are you measuring the reduction in your stress-related illnesses within your organization because people can now work remotely? It's one to measure. So are you measuring absenteeism, right, as an organization in terms of your own KPIs? Because it impacts productivity. So if you had people being truant because they're working 5 days a week, coming from maybe the mainland to the island, spending 7 to 8 hours in traffic, and so once a month the person pulls a sickie, then you now have a remote working policy, for example, where you can do because you're leveraging technology. And then suddenly you find out that your sickies have reduced. So has the organization gained? Yes. So as a HR practitioner, if you're then building the business case for remote working, those are the kind of things that you ought to be measuring and showing the organization, right? Stress-related sicknesses as well. Can you measure? So I'm not talking about malaria. Malaria is not really stress-related. It's just one of our things here in this country. But if you have people increasingly going to the doctor, we don't know what's wrong, high blood pressure, things like that, and you now allow remote working of some sort as a way to keep people, because remember, we're talking about using technology in this for mobility, right, to manage a mobile workforce. So you're also using technology as a retention tool, because now someone can work from home and still deliver their work. So you're then measuring how effective is their communication. Again, are they able, it's actually sometimes when people are around, they come in and out of your office but they're not actually delivering anything. But when they are working remotely, you're actually seeing showing workings. They are showing workings. They have to show workings. I can use technology to track that. Also, things like, obviously, just overall, it helps you become more efficient, right? Because you're doing, so if you're using a HR tool, for example, you have your employee central, so people can go in and do a lot of admin work themselves. Obviously, within limit, it reduces the amount of time that HR is using to do updates. So you can also measure the impact on HR, right? In terms of how much time is returned back to HR to do real strategic work. Many times as HR practitioners, if we're not careful, you end up being administrative and not strategic. And that's why when it's time for you to think or you put on your thinking cap, you're so tired because you're doing admin that is important, because you have to have your records up to date, because of litigation, because of audits, because of corporate governance. But by the time you're doing that, you're no longer strategic. So tools help us to be more efficient. So you can use that to measure output overall. You can also use it to check compliance rates, right, for different things within your organizations and take away from manual processes. So there's so much that we can do with technology. However, that same technology is also an advantage and a disadvantage, because technology, again, is the very reason why we have mobility. It is. It's a double-edged sword. It is a double-edged sword, because I can sit here, I'm doing a job in New York, and my attention is divided, and therefore my productivity and performance may dip on this side. I had a friend who was working for 2 Fortune 500 companies because of technology. 2. So she was netting in over £2,000 a day. Exactly. And it's because of technology that she could do that. We used to call her cash money. So it's a double-edged sword. You have to use it very strategically in an organization.
Right, thank you so much. You really caned that. You caned that conversation. So, riding on the talk about your friend. Now, I'm going to go into cross-border talent management. It's another reality of the times. Personnel management has long gone. People now do different jobs from different locations. That's why I worry about people who think working has to be by presence. And another thing she said, by the way, that I would like us to zoom in on as human resource management people, is the fact that your performance measurement is now changing. It's not what it used to be anymore. There are new matrices to measure performance for HR. But coming now to cross-border talent management, what works for you?
Cross-border talent management, I think trying your best to remain in sync. So down to the very little thing, like allow them work in their time zones, make sure that, the schedules are in sync. Instilling a culture of discipline and excellence. That's very important, because if you're working with cross-borders, somebody is in China, one is in Nigeria, everybody has to be disciplined. And the name of the game is productivity. Is productivity.
I was going to ask you how discipline is measured, but you just answered it.
The name of the game is productivity. You have to be able to define what the output is, when the output is due, and they have to know why. They have to know when people are working in a decentralized way. The very big thing, and I think Uche touched on this also, is that they need to know what the business is doing, their role. Are they doing meaningful work? If you don't feel like you're doing meaningful work, you don't even work in HQ, you're somewhere just picking one or two, the momentum will drop in some way. You will struggle to hold that up. So they need to know why. It has to be made very, very clear to them. They have to tap into that. Their goals also have to align with your company goals. You have to find a way for long-term commitment. They have to understand your culture and align with it. And then productivity, performance management is the way. If you don't have your output set, what you really need and when and what it ties to and the overall goal where it leads to, everybody's just going to do whatever at whatever time. And so you will find, things that should have taken 3 months would take 6 months. And really, if there are repercussions for those kind of delays, nothing's going to happen. And then your company will drown in a, pool of just disengagement and not meeting its own targets. So performance management, really at the leadership, middle management level also, everybody has to be held accountable. Our culture is, we always say excellence. We have a nice culture term called juice, so we can talk about it later. But the E is for excellence. And to drive excellence, you have to be so intentional about it. Your people, the first panel spoke about your people will mirror their leader. So if as a leader you're accountable, your people know to do their work. Sure. So your leader also can't be sleeping and expecting your team members to be working. No, they'll say, well, since my boss said tomorrow's okay. And then it will go that way. Yeah. So managing cross-border talent teams, you have to be so intentional. And productivity, that's the name of the game. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Productivity is the name of the game. That's so it's an acronym. I mean, that's a good tagline to jump on. It's a good tagline to jump on. Okay, Uche, we're going to round up with you and this particular question. Diversity and inclusion. Everybody's shouting that thing now. DNI. So I want us to answer that question with a twist. Right, because I see that people have gone on the extreme with diversity and inclusion. We don't know what is not allowable to include anymore. What's the limit for inclusion, please?
What's the limit for inclusion?
Yes.
Okay, I will speak as a Nigerian operating in Nigeria.
That's fine.
I think so. Diversity and inclusion. I think it started as some kind of fancy thing initially, but the truth is that organizations are starting to actually take it very seriously for so many different reasons, right? When you do external reports out to international organizations, even if you're trying to access funds or for brand building, it's always good for you to report on your D&I statistics and what you're trying to achieve. It's a journey, right? We're not all going to get there from day one. So if you hear that other organizations are doing X, Y, Z, don't be too worried about that. But the beauty of diversity is that it's just allowing a multiple diversity of skills, people, talent, opinions. It's not so much about more women. More women is a key one because we have been an underrepresented group for a very long time, especially in what are traditionally male-dominated sectors like maybe energy, manufacturing, construction, engineering. You typically find that the statistics is globally, it's about 25% of women would be in those organizations. And so increasingly, women are moving away from STEM-related roles. They want to do things that are more creative because they feel that it gives them maybe more time and flexibility for the family. So diversity is a good thing, and it's been shown that companies that have more women on their board or in their organizations do 30% better on their in their bottom line. Stats, proven fact. In fact, in 2024, we have a working group and we want to actually distill how and why that is possible. The statistics just say that now, but we're not really sure exactly how we translate. And someone said at a recent workshop that we had, he said it's because when women are in your company, it was a man who said this. He said, because when women are in your company, they're less likely to steal. And he said they're less likely to be in places where you're having offline conversations about make we run this deal, so they are less likely to steal, and so the invoices or the cost of projects are less likely to be inflated, and so you're more profitable. The jury's still out on that, but we welcomed it as a women. We said thank you, sir, for these kind words. You get? So diversity is a good thing, and then inclusion is basically, so diversities are okay. I'm a woman, I've been allowed on the table, right? But when I get there, everything I say, they just pass me up. It's not what she said is not important. But if somebody else says the same thing that I said, they will reference what he said. Who has experienced that as a woman? And you're thinking, wait, hang on, but I said that first. So the person jumps on your point and says it. Maybe a man jumps on your point, says it, and what his is, is accepted or regarded. Inclusion is pretty much you are in there and you can actually speak, whether you're a man, woman, young, old, Gen Z, millennial, baby boomer, it doesn't really matter, right? So What's the extent of inclusion? I say that if you don't include people, allow people to have a voice and opinion within your organization, you might be missing out on the best ideas. Particularly when you have been in an organization for a long time, you stop seeing some things because now it's business as usual. You have gone into operational mode. It's working. Let's not fix it. When you have new voices, and those new voices don't necessarily mean new people. It might be someone who's joined the team for the first time, moved the department, right? They have the advantage of not being biased by history. They have the advantage of having a clear view of what's going on. And so they will speak up. It might not necessarily have all the full context that is required, but something that they might say might help to shift your thinking or direction in a particular way. So organizations that actually pay attention to diversity of skills and people, and they actually include them, tend to do better. You know, I have my colleague here, you know, with me. She's still at the back, nursing, you know, on the third row. She has her phone up. When we have something we need to execute, right, I can set a strategic direction. I said, look, this is what we're trying to achieve, right? And allow her carte blanche. Go get it done. Blank canvas. So she'll go and get it done. And when she gets it done, what has it done for me? First of all, it saved me 70% of my time for me to sit down and do it from scratch. I can then use something I would have spent 10 hours doing. I can now spend 2 hours and just give it a strategic finish or finesse. But if I don't trust her and I don't include her and I want to treat her like a junior colleague who, how long have you worked? What can you possibly know, right? I don't allow her be included, then I'm going to spend 10 hours doing work that I should be spending 2 hours doing. So this also speaks to micromanaging. You have to allow people, if you've hired someone to do a job, include them. Let them be part of a meeting. You see that whole thing of needs to know basis? I don't think, I think we need to be done with that. I actually think because you're giving the person half information, so they're not seeing the full picture to be able to deliver the work to you. I'm not saying that there's no confidentiality. I'm not saying, oh, breach confidentiality. No, that's not what I'm saying. But you need to give people enough information, enough context, enough backstory and background for them to be able to deliver their work. And I'll tell you where that shifted for me. When I used to be in commercial, there was this organization that invited us to do a bid. No, we found out, my MD called me and said there was a bid out, was a major piece of work, game-changing piece of work that was going to run into several millions of dollars. And the company I was working for at the time was a leading service provider in that space, so we should have been invited. But we were not invited. 1 week after orders had started, he found out. And then he called me and he said, we have to find a way to get in, right? And I said, okay, but why were we not invited in the first instance? I said to him, you can't just tell me find a way for us to get in. 1 week after orders have started, there's a backstory, you're not giving me enough information. He says, just find a way. And I said, no, I'm not going to go. Something happened. He said, yes, actually, something did happen. I said, okay, tell me. He says that many years ago, the man who was the consultant on this project now, he was delivering a piece of work for them in another company. They did something that he was a quote-unquote a breach of contract, right? The client basically breached the contract. Clients being clients was being a bully. He walked into the operations center where I wasn't working at the company at the time, where we had, our employees working, and he shut it down. He asked everybody to get up and walk out. And it's the kind of thing that he can do because he down did it one day when I was working with him. At a negotiation, they put 100,000 naira. They put 100,000 on the board, and then he said, "Hi." He said, $100,000. They said 100,000 naira. He said to me, "Close your laptop and let's walk out." I'm looking at him like, "Are you serious?" He said, "Now." I closed my laptop. I followed him quietly. So I knew it was the kind of thing he could do. He shut it down. He shut down the operating center. The man lives in Nigeria. Fast forward to maybe like 8 years later, this man is now the consultant in charge of that project. Of course, the man excluded the company. Do you see? So if he had not trusted me enough with this information, I couldn't navigate that murky water. So when I went to the man, I just sat with him and I said, first of all, I said, listen, let me tell you something. I wasn't there when that thing happened. The man laughed. I said, I wasn't there. I said, something was wrong with them that time. I said, that's why people like me are here now. I said, so please, not for his sake, for my sake. The man had a good laugh and he said, okay, do you know what? You made me laugh. I'll put you in. And we got in. Wow. Do you see? So this is an example of how she doesn't need to know. It's confidential information. You have to include people. And how do you include them? You give them information, you equip them with the tools required, you give them the authority and the mandate to deliver the work, knowing that you're standing behind the scenes and you'll catch them if they fall. So is diversity and inclusion a thing? It is a thing, and it's been proven that organizations that have a true D&I structure are starting to outperform companies that don't have it.
Thank you so much. Where's the round of applause, please? So many gems in there. But I mean, on this note, we're just going to round up now. And thank you so much, my panelists. You guys all came prepared, like you were blazing fire. But I hope that more than what went on here, we've equipped you with information and knowledge that you need to go and retain your talents, please, as much as you can. You know, don't let people leave your organizations because there were basic things you could have done, should have done, and did not do. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much. Can we just give ourselves a round of applause for staying attentive? Awesome, awesome, awesome. So we're trying to move things quickly, and we have taken off. We're literally just in the air. We have 2 more sessions left, but because we are such considerate people, we're looking at how to just reduce the sessions a bit so that afterwards we can have a networking while we eat. Is that good? Are we good to do that? Yes? I don't hear yes. Are we good? I didn't force you to say the yes, but can I have a yes? Awesome. So right now we're going over to a fireside chat. It's very exciting. I'm very excited to be doing this, and I'll explain why. But I'm just going to read her bio. If you have the brochure, she's on speaker's page, the first one. So I'm just going to read. Deji Ajibola, GPHR, is a seasoned HR leader and lawyer with over 18 years of multi-country, multicultural, and multi-industry HR experience. Deji initially trained as a lawyer, but decided to change course for a career in HR management, gaining a master's degree in international employment, relations, and HR management from the London School of Economics and Political Science, London, in 2003. A certified global HR practitioner, she started her HR career in Philips Consulting before joining the Human Capital Management Group of Owando PLC, at the time one of Africa's largest integrated energy solutions providers, and the first African company to have a cross-border listing on the Nigerian and Johannesburg Stock Exchange. From Owando, she spent 5 years in General Electric, GE, initially as GE's first employee services leader in West Africa, and then as the HR compliance and localization manager for SSA. She joined Microsoft in January 2013 and left 7 years later as a HR lead in the Middle East and Africa multi-country cluster. She is currently the HR director and chief people champion of Guinness Nigeria, a Diageo company. Deji is a sought-after speaker nationally and internationally, and she sits on the board of Women in HR. She has won several awards for her impact in the corporate world and the promotion of youth and women in the workplace. Her career has shown her to be a strong partner and trusted advisor of CEOs and leadership teams, someone who unlocks the potential of talent and a strong advocate for diversity and inclusion. Can we all just put our hands together as we invite Deji Ajibola to the stage? Awesome, awesome. I think I'll get a hug now at this time. Awesome. So you can sit anywhere, actually. So this is going to be a bit more of a freestyle flow. And can we all hear me? I feel like this microphone is touching. There's a microphone just beside you. Okay, you have one. So just to give context, I met Deji in 2013, 10 years ago, as I was going into HR. When I was looking to go into HR, I had just started my master's in HR. And I would go to her for advice. I would go to her for encouragement. At that point, I was very eager to specialize. And she said, Tone, the first thing to do is be a generalist. Maybe I shouldn't have listened though. I should have just specialized. But it was great that I listened because it meant that I learnt everything from the roots. And I didn't just focus on one area and stick to one area. So I just wanted us to know that, backstory and just know that she was instrumental in getting me in HR and keeping me in HR and ensuring that, I'm just like her or growing up to be like her. So you can give her a round of applause for this as we have come full circle. So today I want to do some digging into her life. She's quite private, and I'm not, as we know. So hopefully we can get her to spill some personal and professional nuggets as well. It'll be good to know your journey, to know that, I know you were being a lawyer. Law and HR, there's a very fine line, but it'll be good to understand that journey, what made you make that leap into HR. And you're not just HR in Nigeria, you've done EMEA, so you're global at this point. So what was that journey like for you, and why did you make that leap? And as always, I love stories, so feel free to just drop a few here and there.
Thank you very much, though. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to share and to learn as well.
Yes.
So like Toon shared, my background is in HR.
Yeah.
It's in law. So I went to Ife, studied law, and I basically went into law, pursued law because it was the natural flow for me at that point in time. My parents were in the legal field in one capacity or the other. So it was just the next natural thing to do in my family. I'm the oldest child. But at some point in Ife, my 4th year, so I had 1 year to go. I had that growing unease about my lifelong pursuits and what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And I felt, and much as I wasn't sure at the time what I wanted to do, I knew what I didn't want to do, and I knew I didn't want to be a lawyer, right, or practice as a lawyer. So I started a 2-year search for, okay, what is it that I want to do? Some people are lucky. So they are born, you have a child, and from the way the child behaves or acts, or, a dramatic child, this child is going to be in theater arts, or, that little child that likes to take apart toys, and put it back together. Okay, that's an engineer, I didn't have those kind of gifts. So it was pretty much, balanced, straightforward. So I knew I was going to have to take time to find out what my future was going to look like work-wise. Because I'd already started to think about it, like what's beyond finally getting out of Ife. At the time, it just seemed like Ife was taking forever, So from year 4, 1 year to go, I started that search. A lot of it was introspective, first of all. What do I like? What makes me tick? I knew I wanted something that had to do with people, but not from the front, like entertainment or media or PR even. I knew that wasn't my thing, but I wanted something that was very, very connected to people. So I started that search, a lot of it introspectively. I also asked people that I felt knew me very well, not my parents, but people that I worked closely with or schooled closely with. I was like, hey, what do you think? Okay, what do you think are my strong points? What do you think, I shy away from? So it was like a 2-year search thereabouts. And I can't really tell you at what point I knew it was HR, because HR was not a buzzword at the time. I'm still amazed when I walk into HR conferences and it's full. You know, because you were either at that time a doctor, a lawyer, an architect. That's what your parents were telling you to do. I'd never heard of the concept HR, personally. You know, so, but it was a lot of searching, a lot of research. I knew I wanted to, like I said, I knew the areas where I wanted to focus on. Yeah. And it was in the course of that search at some point that HR literally dropped on my lap. It wasn't by meeting a HR person, because even people that I met that were in HR fell into HR by accident. You know, they were admin people, they grew into the personnel department, that's what it was called at the time. Or they just, you know, they're about to be fired and they found themselves in. There was nothing positive about the HR story. So anyway, long story short, I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this well. I'm going to do this from a foundation of knowledge. I just didn't want to fall into HR the way, you know, others fell into it, that I, in my own circle, in my own, you know, sphere of relationships. So I went to the British Council. And I said to the man there, I said, well, this is what I'm looking for. At the time, to do research, remember, that it wasn't, now everybody has a device and the internet in their hands. At that time, you had to go to a business center. So in the British Council, there were only 2 computers that you had to, you know, people could use to do their research. And of course, there was always a queue. At the day I went there, there was only 1 computer that was working. And there was a queue, but you know, they were on break. I think they were about to go on break or something. So literally this guy, he says, okay, fine, this is what you're looking for. You need to do your research here. This is what you need to look for. And until they closed, I was there till they closed, and he didn't allow anybody else to use that computer. You know, he just said, sorry, you know, it's occupied, you can't use it. Didn't know him from Adam. So did my research. Okay, what am I looking for? What's the duration? So before then, I was like, okay, I want to do a master's. I don't want to do a master's in Nigeria. Where? Okay, do I go to the States? A good friend of mine had gone ahead, you know, after secondary school to the States. She was home visiting. And she said, hey, the States is far away. It's further out from Nigeria. Maybe you should look at somewhere that is closer by, but where you would get a sound education. And then also, typically, master's programs at that time in the States were 2 years. I felt I had been in school for so long. I couldn't do a 2-year postgraduate degree because, you know, there was 1 more year of law in Ife, 5 years. There was the year of law school. There were ASU strikes in between, remember. You know, if it was very political, you know. So for me, I was like, I can't wait to start working. So anything that was going to be longer than a year was a no-no for me. So I narrowed it down to the UK, and it was down to, okay, where in the UK? So I felt, I don't know the first thing about HR, but I'm going to go to the best place in HR I can find. You know, best school in HR I can find, for HR that I can find. So that's why I went to that's what took me to the British Council. Did some research. He helped me, this man, identified the top 3 schools in the UK for HR at the time, because there was a way their database was where, depending on the course, it would tell you the top schools that offer that course. So I got the details of the top 3 schools, and then I thanked him, left, sent him a thank you note, thank you email. He never responded. You know, so I went to Ife. So I went back to Ife, and I said I need 4 transcripts, 1 for, you know, backup.
Just in case.
Just in case. And for anyone that knew what universities were at the time, very manual. So there was no email, computers, whatnot. So you physically had to go to the school, hang around, beg, cajole people to push out this thing. You know, so I spent 3 days in Ife, got my transcripts, and I came back with them. I didn't tell my parents. The parents didn't know what I was doing, because as far as my dad was concerned, hey, I've sent you to school, you're about to, you know, start law school. After 1 year, thank God, I can leave you and face my other children. So yeah, so that was basically it. So I applied, and then just before I applied, I met another friend, good friend of mine, older friend, who said, look, how are you going to fund this thing? I said, I have no idea. So he said, okay, that means you need a scholarship. I said, yes. He said, okay, this was the military dispensation at the time. We're under military rule, I won't name names, were such that a lot of doors were shut to Nigeria and Nigerians at the time, right? Because not just it wasn't just because we were not a democracy, but there were a lot of things going on that were like, okay, shut down, sort of like the way what Russia is going through right now. So, you know, my friends were like, what are the chances of you getting a scholarship? Nobody's getting a scholarship. But I said I will get a scholarship.
So another round of research and looking and, digging. So around the time, I had graduated from IFE, and then this was in between IFE and law school. So maybe 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks before I started law school, I met my husband. And he got on this research train with me because I made it very clear, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing, and this is when I'm doing it, right? So he helped me also search, and thankfully he was working, so he had access to the internet and the computer. So I found a scholarship, a fully paid scholarship. So literally finished law school in February or thereabouts. No, finished law school in February, got married in June, and went to do my master's in September. And I haven't looked back, basically. So that 1 year, something I was also doing in that time, I was also working as a lawyer, because I said to myself, well, this law that you are so convinced that you don't want to do, you've never actually practiced. Maybe you're dealing with trauma from being in, from the theory, So I said, okay, work in a law firm, a proper firm. Now, from my experience, following my dad to work, I knew litigation, going to court wasn't me. It wasn't soft life enough, So I said, okay, litigation is out. What about corporate practice? So I hounded my dad and his friends till they found me a law firm that I could work, during that 1 year that I was also doing research. So another advantage, access to a computer as well. My husband was doing the homework. I was doing the homework, trying to find a scholarship. So basically, I worked as a lawyer in that time. So I was literally a spy. I said to myself, I'm on a mission. This is spy work. I'm not coming here to be comfortable. Yeah. So I was a nuisance to every single lawyer in that law firm because I wanted to know everything. So even when the lawyers were going to court, but as I didn't like litigation, I would follow them anyway. Go with them, see, okay, how does this work? How is it done? Then some other days I would be with the corporate lawyers, asking all the questions in the world and getting on everybody's nerves. But that 1 year was great because then I knew for sure that law wasn't something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I got questions, of course. A lot of questions around, you spend so much time studying law and qualifying as a lawyer. How can you spend all this time and not practice law? But I said to myself and to them, what is this length of time? 6, 7 years, maybe max, compared to the rest of my working life.
Awesome. Yeah.
It just seemed a very tiny price to pay. So that was it. So came back, it was horrible. It was horrible in the sense that new culture, new experience. It's one thing to go to to Europe as a tourist, right? You go in summer and you come back. It's another thing to be there through the winter, studying a course you knew nothing about. So my classmates were mostly people who were practicing HR practitioners. Wow. And I was there not even knowing what the terms they threw around in class meant. So I had to get a dictionary for HR. Wow. I had to get a dictionary for HR to even follow the classes and what they were talking about. But it was great because I think it increased my grit. It gave me a lot of resilience on your own. Yeah. Africans were very communal. Time for exams, we have study groups. I remember law school and okay, let's sit around, let's ask ourselves past questions. In the UK, you're on your own. Especially in London, for that matter, you're purely on your own. And this was pure Latin to me. So I panicked so much at the time that my husband was concerned that I wouldn't go through with this program. So thankfully, there was some restructuring going on at his place of work at the time. So he literally took a career break and he shut down for 2 months. And I opened my door one day at school in the flat where I was living. And he was standing there. Wow. So he said, okay, I'm here to make sure you graduate. So literally he sat with me and helped me structure this mountain. Because I just saw it as a mountain. I mean, you had pile high of different subjects you knew nothing about 9 months previously. Yeah. And it just seemed so overwhelming at the time. So he said, no, this is how because he had done a bit of HR, general management. So he was able to help me sort of like simplify it and not make it look so intimidating, as it were. So he helped me put the structure in place. Okay, this is structure, this structure, that structure, that, and was just able to be there to encourage me through that. And it's been HR ever since for me.
My goodness, I think we can give just clap to that. There's so many things I'm getting from it. You were resilient, definitely. That man that you met at British Council, I don't think he was real. I actually think it was like a sprinkle, like a dash of luck, right? And so much favor. How was he there to say, shut the door, no one else is using it, get what you need? You know, and I think about how you didn't have what we have access to now, what you have access to now. And you still went seeking for knowledge. That in itself, after a while, I'm sure they've been like, you know what, it's enough. I'll just stick with law. Law it is. And be a good lawyer at that, you know. But, you know, just really good, because I've never really heard this. I've just known it from when you were Microsoft. So to think that there was obviously past before this and that journey. So thank you. So now we're just going straight into how has HR evolved? You know, you've talked about how back in the days there were very few people in the room that could stand up and say they were, you know, HR practitioners, and now we're having full rooms, having full discussions. How has HR evolved to you, and what are the things that kind of stand out for you? Like, oh my goodness, you know, this is now a buzzword, or this is now, you know, practiced or normalized. What would you say?
I think it's been an interesting transition through the years. So like I said, early days, at least within my own sphere, HR wasn't the cool thing to do. You know, so even back to the time in doing my master's, where you had study groups in law, people that came from Nigeria and they knew themselves, engineering, architecture, IT, there was the IT boom at the time, you know, but I was the only Nigerian studying HR in my set at the time. You know, so which meant that I had to do a lot of the work alone, which of course builds your resilience. That's the silver lining, but it wasn't funny, you know, at all. So if I look at HR then, of course it was more admin. It was a lot of admin. We'll call you when we want to hire someone, process someone's salary, contracts, or fire someone, right? So HR was a back office function. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations, and you know, in Africa, if I think about Africa, that's still the case. But you've seen that evolution from personnel management, I hate that word, from personnel management.
Not the only one.
To literally human resources management, people culture champion, human capital management, call it what you will, because there's obviously that, now there's that realization that, look, people are the building blocks of the success of any organization, as it were. So you've seen HR slowly come from the back of the room to having a seat at the table. But it's, you know, there have been different, should I say, measures of success, depending on how much we as HR practitioners take it upon ourselves to know the businesses it is that we're supporting. So I say to people all the time, HR practitioners all the time, that you are a trusted business advisor first, right? Before you're a HR person. So ideal state for me is that if I'm sitting at a meeting or at a table with my leadership team, you shouldn't be able to tell who the HR person is at that table, because they know enough about the business to hold a business conversation. Because if you don't understand something, how can you support it? How can you inform the business on the kind of people or the kind of skills or the kind of culture it is that they need, right, in that business? So there's no way you can do that, or you can only do that from a limited extent. You don't want to see the organization see you as that function or person that is by the side. We're discussing core business, but when we need anything that has to do with people, okay, HR come. It should be front and center. That initiative or that, you know, change, that project can't happen unless you're there. Right? That is what your role should be as HR. And I've seen that slowly trend. So luckily, or thankfully, I've worked for very strong brands. So, you know, I have experience across several industries, and it's always been my aim, or by chance, actually, I wouldn't even say it's my aim. It's typically the strongest player in that industry that I've ended up working for. And what that has afforded me is to really see the full potential of HR, what HR is meant to be, you know, at the end of the day. So there's also been a lot of automation, digitization, so which means that a lot of the things that HR was typically responsible for, filing documents, helping people process ABC, it's automated. So that HR has the space, the capacity to really be at that table and be that trusted advisor that they're meant to be. But of course, you remain true to your North Star. In other words, business people are driven by business, you know, considerations, profits, you know, and all that. you are the voice, you are the people advocate in that room. You're a business leader, yes, but you are that voice that is reminding people that there's a people angle or there's a people concern or welfare angle to this conversation that we should not forget as we try to push the business forward. So HR has really evolved. Another thing that has been great, of course, is the flow, the abundance of knowledge, right? The globalization of the world. In other words, hey, what's going on in any part of the world, really, HR-wise, you have access to it. So look at LinkedIn. And, people like Tone that have taken it upon themselves to share best practice. So this is what's going on. This is what's happening. And then me sitting in, Ibadan, Shagamu, somewhere in my HR, I have access to that information. That was not the case before. So I think the opportunity lies in us, always learning. So never feeling like, oh, we've arrived. I'm the HR, whatever your title is, I've arrived, I'm okay. It's always constantly reminding yourself, look, I'm a student in this journey of life, my professional life. I'm a student because the world is changing, the business is changing. How you do business is changing, right? Even if the business largely remains the same, but how you get work done is changing. And we have to keep abreast of those changes as they move. So AI, for example, how many of you know that with Zoom, so before COVID, of course, meetings had to be face-to-face, right? Zoom was just something, it was like FaceTime. Okay, I'm talking to my people abroad, and that's when you use, on that. Now it's here to stay, right? And then, okay, so we have Zoom meetings, that's a bit normalized. But now, very recently, there's AI in Zoom, where Zoom is able to take the minutes of your meeting for you, right? So we've been playing with it at work, we love it. Because typically with a lot of those meetings, it's the HR person that is taking the notes, right?
Thank you.
Right? So you've delegated that to technology so that once again, you are able to really be involved in the business. But there's also a mental shift that has to happen to be a successful HR person today, where a lot of us still see ourselves as, we're HR, we're at the side. So yeah, it's bad enough that the business tries to push us to the side sometimes, but a lot of us also see ourselves as that side or back office support, right? So it starts with a mental shift in how you see yourself. Are you a business person or are you a personnel person? Let me put it that way. So I've worked in industries that I didn't know anything about. So Microsoft first time in IT, Oando first time in oil and gas, Philips Consulting, where I started my career, first time working, to be honest. Same thing for Guinness or Diageo, first time in FMCG. So for me, whether I like it or not, I'm a student by default because it immediately hits me that I don't know anything about this business. So a lot of HR principles are the same and you can apply them anywhere. But the business, I'm here for the business. I'm here to support the business. I'm here as a business person, not as a HR person. Right? So therefore, first thing I have to do is to learn about the business. How do I have a conversation with my MD, or with my business leaders if I don't know what they're talking about or I don't understand, what they're talking about. So that is always, first step. So that for me has been the biggest shift in HR, from that back office to the, seat at the table, but moving on from that to, making sure you add value as you're giving that seat at the table. So some years ago, it's, oh yes, we deserve a seat at the table, sit at the table. Okay, we're giving you a seat at the table. Yeah, sit down. What are you? What's your contribution? Right? So it can't be in a business meeting, you're quiet until the people topic comes up. Right? How much do you know about that business or about what's going on, about trends? Right? So you also have to be externally focused. So it's not enough to know about that business as it is currently. What's going on elsewhere? Right? I'm not talking about elsewhere in the world. Oh, in London we do this. No. What's going on in the company next door, right? How are they? We're dealing with an attrition issue. How is the next company dealing with attrition, right? What are they doing with talent management? What are they doing with engagement? So so in other words, there's a lot of collaboration that also needs to happen. Collaboration in the sense that nothing should stop you from reaching out to the next HR person to say, how are you doing this? How are you managing this? Forget level, forget age, forget hierarchy. I always say to people, those things, those distinguishing factors are in your head, right? So we talk a lot about mentoring. Oh, I want you to be my mentor. But for me, I also believe very strongly in reverse mentoring because it's your juniors, quote unquote, that are more abreast with what is going on today, right? AI, digitization, and all that, all those buzzwords. It's your Gen Z that will tell you what's going on. You know, not your peer or not your, you know, exactly. So it's good to mentor people, but it's also good to humble yourself enough to have a reverse mentor and people that you can learn from. So agility, always learning, always keeping up with trends, being very curious about the business. You know, so why do we put Guinness in a bottle and not a can? Right? The simplest questions, and of course also the complex as well. So you always have to have your mind sharp and awake. You can never arrive, you know, to be successful in HR, my view.
My goodness, you know, as she was speaking, I was just going through my questions like, oh my goodness, she's literally just racing through them without knowing. But something you said, I remember when I started HR, I'd go for the first conference I went for, I was really taken aback. The focus was really about getting a seat at the table. So just hearing you say, why? Like when people come in, they shouldn't know you're HR. They should, if you're with leadership, you should literally have enough business acumen, or at least understand your industry and your company enough to not be different, to speak so that in some cases they can say, you know what, Tom, go on behalf of me, or did you go on behalf of me? Doesn't always have to be the CFO or the COO. It can also be the CPO sometimes. So I really, 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 really enjoyed that. So now I'm going to speak about the different industries. And my last question will still be, why is Guinness not in a can? Because now I started thinking about it, like, why is it not in a can, really? Like, I'm hoping that someone can have a very creative answer before she gives us the right answer. But my question now, sorry, is it in a can?
But funny enough, feedback from some consumers is that there's a difference in taste. You know,
See?
because of for a can, you have to have, there's a different amount of carbon dioxide.
Oh, really? Yes. Who are these people that notice this thing? They need help sometimes for them to know the difference, you know. But I'm going to ask for me, you've been in many industries. GE in itself is like an industry of industries because it's really a conglomerate. Philips Consulting is, even though it's consulting, it's touching across many industries. Microsoft, I remember back then I used to look at her in awe because the tech craze hadn't started. And I was like, Loki, she should just see me and say, Tom, I love you so much. You're so good. Come and work. I can even be unpaid. Maybe after 3 weeks or 3 months, they will say, you know what, put her on a tiny stipend. And the tiny stipend to me would have been a lot, you know. And then moving on, you know, Oando as well, oil and gas. And then now FMCG and Guinness. What did each industry, maybe we can leave out Philips. No, actually, I think I like the idea of Philips. So this is the second to last question before we go to the future of HR. But what did each industry teach you? You know, and I know that some of them your focus wasn't just Africa, it was, you know, Middle East as well. What one thing did each role teach you or each industry teach you?
Okay, so I think one thing that has helped me thrive in these, you know, multiple industries you've talked about is that curiosity.
Yes.
You know, just curious. That not having that fear of, I don't know anything about this. I don't want to go there and not shine. You know, for me, it's always the reverse to say, no, I want to go there and be a student and learn, right? And shine eventually. So if I start with Philips Consult, there was something you mentioned about, you know, where we talked many years ago about being a generalist or starting as a generalist and what that affords you, where you touch on everything and how that prepares you for general management many years later because, you know, your specialists come to you and you're able to basically oversee what they're doing because you know enough about, you know, each of their specialties. So I think Philips Consulting was a great place to start for me because, like you said, it's one consulting firm, but every client is different and their needs are different. What they need from the consulting firm is different. So for me, it was a speed crash course boot camp, as it were, in HR. Because remember, I didn't have a HR background.
Yes.
So I didn't want to end up in a company and you're in one department and 10 years later you're there, you know. So consulting for me was a good place to start for that reason. So I could just basically cut across. And it was a small firm at the time that I was there. So which meant that even things I wasn't directly responsible for, I had to do. And that has sort of like been a trait with quite a few of the companies I've worked in. Though they were big brands, in Nigeria and Africa, they were small. So HR, and as far as employees were concerned, HR is HR. So yeah, HR come. So I was also getting generalist experience, even in those other companies that you mentioned. So Philips Consulting, the breadth of experience, the intensity of experience, because you know how consultants are. It's, you're not taking your time and getting things done. It's on to the next project. We have a timeline. You have to stick to that timeline, for that project. Otherwise, your billing goes out of whack. So that was what it gave me, that intense generalist experience, starting off in HR. Moving on to, where did I go after that? Oando. Oando was at the time transitioning from Unipetrol, so old school personnel, industrial, that word again, industrial, traditional company, even though it was oil and gas, it was not Mobil or Chevron, right? And it was just morphing into Oando. So literally, it hadn't been long that Oando had bought Unipetrol, and we're now starting that process of transforming the company into a modern, cutting-edge oil and gas company. So it was great for me consulting work, because, if culture management or change management was a company, that was it at the time. So just dealing with the difference in culture between my boss used to call it the Yoruba-speaking people and the English-speaking people, the age differences, therefore the culture differences, the people that were Unipetrol and proud to be Unipetrol versus the, briefcase, suit-wearing, very funky Western education, Oando people. So having to manage that flow, that process was a big deal. And of course, typically HR went to a lot of people, because there was still a lot of underinvestment in HR. So back to what I think it was Uche mentioned about one person doing 4 or 5 people's jobs, right? That was it for me. And yes, I had a master's, law school, whatnot, but I was a junior HR person. And at the time, that company, big on hierarchy because of its history. So I wasn't made to, I always was reminded. Exactly. A lowly. So what was good about that was I was involved in everything because I was asked to do everything, right? Yeah, the Omoshe. So, oh yeah, you come and do this with me, come and do that with me. But for me, spy mission, I liked it. I took it for what it was, and I made sure I learned and I grew. And also gave me an opportunity to learn more about the oil and gas industry and what was going on at the time. Husband at the time was in oil and gas, so it was great because in terms of learning about the industry or the sector, I could always he was my expo. When I went home, I could ask him all the questions I didn't do, so which meant I grew quite quickly in that company. Now GE, oil and gas, but this time in a global multinational. So it sounded very nice and glossy on my CV, but GE in Nigeria was very tiny. It was very small. Nigeria was a flag in the ground and nothing more. So that investment in culture, resources, headcount, everything that a typical multinational would have made or that they had made in other parts of the world, Nigeria was the very opposite. Wow. And at that time, I was nobody in HR. Right, so they had been running for some time, the oil and gas sector in particular, or part of GE in particular, because like you said, it's an industry of industries. There were many companies that made up GE at the time. So it was also in a way a consulting role because I was the in-house consultant for the different GE businesses. So when I say different, it wasn't, in a company there's different departments. They were different in the true sense. So GE Oil and Gas had its HQ different from GE Water, different from GE Transportation, different, and they wanted to remain autonomous, right? Because that gave them the opportunity to make decisions quickly. So imagine this youngish woman, now taking on this role, only person in HR, and telling them, no, this is how you have to do things. They weren't used to that, so there's a lot of resistance initially. So for me, the pride and joy I have of just seeing it evolve over the years, where more people were hired, they developed a more unified structure for Africa. It was great to be part of that, and that's what led to my second role in G, which was HR compliance and localization. Because hey, a kangaroo company running amok, so they needed somebody in place to say, okay, no, we need to be compliant, we need to make sure that all our boxes are ticked. So it was great exposure for me because I was dealing with very, very strong senior international stakeholders, right? So for a lot of things that are normal in our culture in terms of HR practices, I had to do a level 1 or level 2 breakdown, explain why do you need a company car in Nigeria? You know, why do you need a driver? I don't understand. Can you explain to me, okay, can you do a survey of other companies and which one of them, you know, so basic things you take for granted, you don't think about, right, in companies. I had to do that research work to explain because I was dealing with people who had never come to Nigeria, right? So it was a lot of learning, a lot of great work, as it were, and putting a lot of those policies and practices in place and having to explain to them until I had to make the case to say, you know what, you guys, you need to come to Nigeria to understand what I'm talking about, right? So that was, you know, good training as well. And then moving on from there, going into my second role in GE, which I did for about 9 months, I didn't quite enjoy it, you know, because I felt for me, I wanted to do what I considered core HR and less of legal and compliance. Right, which was what that role was really skewed towards. It was great to learn about other countries in Africa and, you know, travel to those countries, engage with their leadership teams. But it wasn't, I just wasn't enjoying it after a short while. And then Microsoft came knocking. You know, so again, fish out of water, new sector I didn't know the first thing about. You know, thankfully in the same building as GE. So I was literally going downstairs for interviews and coming back upstairs. You know, at the time. So thankfully I got the job. It was great. Loved it. Still love it. We love nostalgia because IT, I'm very curious about IT. I'm very curious about technology. So I enjoyed my time there, not just as an employee, but also as just learning about what's going on. AI, you know, virtual reality. I mean, virtual reality came out a few years ago, but the prototype, I remember when they brought it to the office, I was so excited, you know, at the time. But also, at the time, only HR person in Nigeria. So being that HR interface for Nigeria, which also came with its own challenges as well, but also a lot of learnings as well, because I was part of an EMEA team, you know, where I had to basically interface with them, localize a lot of global policy. Yeah, so localize a lot of things so that it's relevant to my people here. And then the structure changed, and I now became responsible for the EMEA, the multi-country cluster, which was pretty much all of Africa apart from sub-Saharan Africa, you know, and covering that and, you know, the new learnings that came with that as well. So I think what GE and Microsoft taught me specifically was how to do HR in a multinational environment, how to work with people from different orientations, cultures, backgrounds, nationalities, name it. You know, you couldn't get more difference than what my job was at the time, while still holding the tension in Nigeria, you know. So Microsoft, 7.5 years later, Guinness had been talking to me for about 2 years before I signed up. You know, and that process or that taught me a lot of things, and I explain why. So when that conversation started, I had an immediate mental block because I thought Guinness, my grandfather's drink, it's old school. So I just thought old school. So this is me in Microsoft, right? At the front of technology, the future, advancement, and you want me to go back to personnel management? I said never, you know. So I just thought old school, it's across the bridge. I've never worked on the mainland in my life, you know. Unions, I dealt with unions a lot in my Wando days. I didn't want to go back there. You know, it just seemed very traditional to me. So I didn't even ask a lot of questions. I knew my answer was already no. You know, and at some point, because of the rapport I had struck with the recruiter, I was actually helping her find somebody for the job. I said, hey, there's a job in Guinness, so me, I'm not going. You know? So it wasn't until 2 years later. And this is where, for me, employee-friendly, this is where your practices and benefits are a key attraction lever for organizations. It's one thing to talk about it in theory, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of practitioners talk about it, but it really works. I'll explain why. So, like I said, struck a great relationship with the recruiter. So sometimes we just call her and catch up. How's it going? Have you found anybody yet? I said, I haven't found anybody, but I'm still looking, you know. And she had promised to send some information to me. I can't remember what it was. And she said, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not able to share this information with you today because the person on my team who is based in Nigeria, because recruitment was a COE, so she was South African, based in South Africa, but she had somebody on the ground in Nigeria. She said, oh, I'm so sorry, my recruiter in Nigeria, today is her work from home day, and she's having power issues, so she's not able to send the information. And I was like,
Work from home.
you guys work from home in Guinness, Nigeria? Like, really? And she was like, yeah. And she said, like, oh, like normal. And she started talking about something. I was like, no, rewind. Can you tell me? So it was at that point I actually started asking questions about the organization. So it taught me a lot of things about assumptions and mindsets as well. And that's where employer branding is very important. Because once I took that job, I now took it upon myself to evolve our brand, right? From a traditional grandfather's drink, like I said, company, to a modern company that is inclusive, that is big on diversity, that is, forward-facing and forward-thinking as well, right? So in other words, bring more of the Diageo into Guinness, Nigeria. So she told me a lot about the company. She seemed very passionate with me there for 15 years. She seemed to love it. So I said, okay, actually, this might not be such a bad idea. And a few steps later, I was in the role. So that's has been the learning. So Guinness Nigeria, in terms of what I've learned, like I said, first of all, for me, even before taking on that role, not letting your assumptions and mindset get in the way of your opportunities. That was my first lesson. Because when I got in, the Guinness I had in my head, right, versus what I experienced was night and day. I was actually a bit ashamed of myself, for the assumptions that I had. But it also was clear to me, therefore, what work I needed to do, right, which was, like I said, branding, changing the culture, right, because make no mistake, there were still parts of that culture that were traditional, but changing that culture, bringing more of the Diageo in, localizing a lot of our global policies as well. And that's basically learning about the FMCG sector and how we play a role. So, for example, disability inclusion, right? Because for me, the way I see HR is not enough to be that voice for change. What active role are you playing to be at the forefront of change? How are you driving change? So it's not enough to raise your voice, but how are you driving that change it is that you're talking about or speaking up about? So when I think about disability inclusion, for example, right, there have been challenges with hiring people with disabilities, even though it's something we want to do. But across Nigeria, I realize that it's also something a lot of companies are struggling with as well. So Guinness and some other companies set up a disability network for the private sector. And one of the aims of that network is how do we partner with the government to, one, flesh out the disability inclusion policy. So they rolled out a policy, but there's nothing behind it, right? How do we work with the government to make companies in Nigeria generate more disability? And that's just one example, right? Female representation, another thing. We made a lot of strides there as well. So a lot to learn. I'm still learning because the business landscape is changing. That sector is changing as well. So still it's students, no doubt.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. The one thing I'm taking away is not letting your assumptions and mindsets get in the way of opportunities. We've had mindset and perspective change. To wrap it up, so it's not going to be a long answer, 2 skills that HR people should, HR practitioners should take going forward. Just 2 skills. I know you mentioned agility. Yeah, I'm sure.
So agility being that ability to adapt.
Yes.
Right? What's going on? What are the trends? Where are we going? Right? Where is the world going? And am I going with it?
Awesome.
Right? Where is my sector going? Am I going with it? Where is the organization going? Am I going with it? What are the things I need to pick up or to learn to go with it? So that's where agility comes in. It's a very broad adjective. It's very, very broad, and it covers everything. Right? So there's the agility and then there's business acumen as well.
Wow. Awesome. You've touched on it. Can we just give Deji Ajibala a round of applause as we get ready to wrap up and take a picture? One thing scared me, though, that people are poaching from upstairs while you're downstairs. So anytime your employee says they're going for lunch, track them.
Thank you. Can we give her a round of applause once again? Thank you so much for that. So in a few minutes' time, we'll be wrapping up. But before that, we have got our third and final panel. And this panel is going to be talking about the role of educational sector in enabling a competitive workforce. And to moderate that panel is Hakim. But let me go on to introduce our panelists. And before I go on with that, I'd like to tell you that there's food, yes, and there's also time for you to meet people, ask questions, interact, and all of that. And this will be right after the third panel. So do well to hold on, grab a bottle of water, drink, and relax while this third panel is going on. All right, I'll be introducing the panelists. The first panel on our list is Michael John. Please let's give him a round of applause. Now, Michael John is a high-growth professional with a distinguished background in non-profit and for-profit sectors. As the senior business manager at Tech for Dev, a non-profit social enterprise, he focuses on creating economic opportunities through digital skilling, job matching, and advocacy. Let's give him another round of applause, please. All right, our next panelist is Nisi Madu. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. All right, thank you. All right, please carry on with the applause. Thank you. Now, Nisi Madu serves as the managing partner at Co-Creation Hub Limited, Africa's premier technology innovation center, where she leads the startup support and edtech portfolios. Do well to give her another round of applause, please. Now, the last but not the least on our panel today is Nanke Essien. Let's give her a round of applause, please. All right, now, so one thing you should know about her is that she's the lead strategist at CISA, a management consulting firm in sub-Saharan Africa, specializing in culture transformation and HR advisory services. Let's give her another round of applause, please. All right, our moderator for this particular panel, I'm hoping that he's in. Okay, he is. Now let's give Hakim Onosanya a round of applause, please. Now, Hakim is the leader of the Startups Lagos Innovate team at the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, spearheading interventions that have supported 150 startups and innovation-driven enterprises. Let's give him another round of applause, please. Please, your hands should not pain you yet. Continue. Thank you very much. We're supporting talent here, so go ahead and give another round of applause for me. Thank you.
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I know that I have a very difficult job because I'm in between you and your lunch. So on behalf of the organizers, we're sorry. We'll try to make this as fast as possible. But it's also a very interesting panel because at any point in our lives, I'm sure we've complained and we've got to the conclusion that what our schools are churning out, what the labor market needs, is not just the same. It looks like the school is basically churning out graduates that are needed in the 90s for jobs of 2023. And yet we clamor that there is unemployment. So it looks like we are just going round and round the problem. And that is basically what we'll be talking about today. And I'm also happy that for the first time in a long while, I'm the one asking the questions, because most of the time, when you're in government, you're the ones that are asking, so what is government doing? And you're like, well, we are trying. So now I'm the one going to point the fingers and say, what are you doing? Okay, so interesting, I will start with this question. Is the Nigerian educational sector or are our schools providing the needed workforce? Yes or no? And why do you think so? That question looks like, you don't know. So let's just start to open. What do you think?
Do you want to go? Oh, okay. I feel that's a trap question, so I'm not going to say yes or no. But what I will say is that there is a huge gap, like you rightly said, between what is needed in the industry as of today and what our schools are churning out. Now, do we have the current infrastructure to be able to churn out the right people? The answer is yes. But have we institutionalized those? The answer is actually no. So what we should pay attention to is what sort of skill gaps do we actually have in the market as of now? Because that's how we are going to start to provide solutions. Because we can go ahead and say broadly that there's a huge skill gap, but what sort of skill gaps? So that we can then tailor, tailor interventions to actually solve those skill gaps as of today. Now, it's also a difficult conversation to speak to somebody who has been in education for 25 years and upwards to say your curriculum is dated or your curriculum is not providing the right skills. So what we would require
in the Gen Z balance, your curriculum is not given.
it's not given, do you see? So, so what would be required is to have empirical data to support that, and then to integrate as well, so that both the providers of education, as well as those who are in the private sector or even the public sector looking to hire people, can kind of see the signage and alignment and see why it is necessary for you to pay attention, or for us to pay attention to these skill gaps. So like I said, the infrastructure is available. We probably are not just institutionalizing it as much as possible. The rudimentary method to get there is what we need to pay attention to, and I feel that's where the synergy between organizations or institutions and the educational sector can marry and create a way forward.
A round of applause for her, ladies and gentlemen. One thing I understand from what you said is that you're also a politician, because you did not answer yes or no. Okay.
Okay.
The fact that your guy is now a minister doesn't mean he should be a politician. I need a yes or a no.
Sure. So, I think I would say no. And the truth is, they can definitely do a lot more to be able to, turn out graduates who would meet the needs of industry. But then, like she said, there are a lot of issues being able to do that. And for us, over the years, we've done a lot of work in CC Hub, just trying to find ways to leverage technology to improve education. And when you look at the bit of infrastructure, and especially because a significant number of young people who go through the education system in the country go through the public education system. And so if we're going to be able to see a significant difference in the output of graduates or in type of graduates that we have, then we need to be able to effect changes within that system. And it's really complex. Going into that, it's more complex a lot of times than we look at it on the surface level. And I'll give an example. I remember a few years back, if you look at, I'll just backtrack a little bit to secondary school. Let's start there. If you look at the curriculum for computer science and ICT at secondary school level, there's this bit about coding, right? Of course, we know there's a story about the languages are dated and all of that. And a particular state decided, you know what? Because states do have that autonomy to be able to try to make the curriculum a bit more relevant. And they said, we want to put new coding languages in the curricula. And so, City Hub, look at it, how we're going to do this. It's one thing for you to go ahead and put all of those things there. But then there are significant issues. One, where are the textbooks? Because you cannot put something in the curriculum and there are no resources that schools and students will be able to use. Who is going to create those textbooks? How do you make it available? The second bit is the teachers who are going to deliver this. How do you upskill them at scale? And you know that you cannot just do it. These are probably people who went to, like you said, they've been in the education space 15, 20, 25 years. How do you do that so rapidly? And let's also remember that the academic calendar is ongoing. The holiday is just like 3 months, right? From September, school resumes. They have to be in the classroom. They have to teach. Are they able to all of a sudden start, teaching that new content that you have there? And so a lot of times, by the time they look at all of these constraints, they say, you know what, let's just stay back and do what it is we've been doing, because the process of doing this change is a lot. But to something she also said about integration and ease of integration into that, he's saying, how can we take it little by little? Instead of trying to train teachers at once and leave them, how can we provide, support systems that make it ongoing, and perhaps every single week, term by term, provide support from other teachers or people in industry, or young people who are learning how to code on their own, and say, can you be a mentor to a teacher in secondary school and support them on how to do this? So no, they're not. They need to improve, but then there are significant challenges around that we also need to pay attention to. That will be my feedback.
Aha, so we now see who the non-politician is. The answer is no. So Michael,
hi.
Please don't say yes because she has said no.
Yeah, the answer is no, actually.
And the no's have it.
And the no's have it. But to speak to why the answer is no, let's just work with the reality, because we're addressing the educational sector, right? So it cuts across tertiary, secondary, down all the way down. But I'll speak to just an example of why my reason is no, is because I think the Nigerian Education Act, I think subsection 5C thereabout, one of the mandates for the act, right, is to be able to create, or rather to support the development of labor, right, that is relevant to market realities and the needs of national development. Statistics basically say that by 2030, there will probably be 20 million jobs on field, and largely these jobs will be digital jobs. So the question is, if the education sector is going to fulfill that mandate, it means that it has to be prepping people now for those 20 million jobs globally that will be on field. It also tells us that statistics again, and references the World Bank. I think Google did something with IFC sometime in 2020, and it's the fact that when you look at these figures, it's about 20% of analog jobs are going to get digitized, which means that the labor force, if they don't follow the trend, would ultimately end up in unemployment. So what you're at the risk of right now is that the current unemployment rate is about to increase if nothing is done, right? And so the question is, who's responsible for that? And then you go back to the people who educate the talent and the workforce. And this is where the issue gets really, it's nightmarish, and I'll explain. It's the fact that only in 2007 did the NUC begin a reform for the minimum academic standard, basically program document. And it took about from 2007 to this year. So it's this year that the new version, the CCMAS, was launched, and it was supposed to start September 23rd. Now, what does that mean? It means that since 1982 to 2007, the structure
That's
of the
25 years.
Yeah, 25 years. The structure of the curriculum being used in Nigeria did not change. Let me bring it home. We've been doing Nollywood, right, for a long time. But just in September 2023 is when you're going to have a course on film and multimedia for the very first time in school. I wouldn't talk about the other courses, right? So for me, the answer is no. Is work being done to change it? Yes, but I don't think it's happening fast enough.
It looks like your own no is like a depressing kind of no.
I'm so sorry.
Because it just occurred to me that it took 25 years for us to decide to rejig, and then it took us 16 years to now do the rejig. Because 2007 we decided, 2023 we have still not finished deciding. We don't know when we'll be done. And the annoying thing about government policy is we are basically reviewing based on 2007 scenarios. So we decided to bring it home in 2007. That means that by the time we are going to launch, most likely next year, we are launching a 2007 level document. And then after 10 years, we'll now say, well, let us now do for the future, which is starts 2024. God help us. That is. I'm happy I'm not in government being answering questions. I'm the one asking the questions. It's fun today. Okay, so I know we don't have much time. So haven't looked through, that was all I did yesterday, and I looked through everybody's profiles and ensure that I don't ask questions that you look at me like, how did this guy ask this question? So I'll start with Nanke. Your work has been around organizational management with people at the core of it for a long time. And there is a difference between the skill that you come out with post-uni and being able to engage in a workforce. So my question to you is there a gap Migration has been about gap because that is where that is Nigeria is, even we are in a gap, we are not even careful. So is there a gap between the kind of culture that the organizations of today are trying to build and the software that our universities have installed in our graduates? And how are we trying to close it so that we don't frustrate HR to almost become prisoners and say, at this point, I cannot even just go to jail because that's the only place they can train you well. So is there a gap from experience changing cultures? What is in the head of our Nigerian graduates? Because if you say people need to compete in the workforce, competing in the workforce is not just doing your work, it's also aligning with organizational culture. It's also understanding that this is how the workforce of today and the future is, and I have to change to be in that line.
Okay.
And what needs to be done?
So the answer to your gap question this time is no.
Now you're not more a politician.
So I think that the first things we need to I like to pay attention to the foundation. If an ordinary graduate is going to school, the major thing is my father wants me to go to school and I'm supposed to come out and be a graduate. So for many people, they just want 4 years or 5 years or 6 years to just pass by. And so you'll find that, how do you say that thing? The school passes through them, but they don't pass through the school, right? And the other thing you must recognize is that the organization is looking for already equipped and well-baked employees to come in. But one thing we must also recognize, and that's one motive, right? One thing we must also recognize is that Africa, by its very nature, even Nigeria, by its very nature, we are quite a multicultural environment. So what you would ordinarily, even though the technology to be excellent is universal, or the technology to problem solve is universal, the definitions for many of us are as largely based on our experiences, largely based on influences, largely based on what we have seen. So if we take that, if we juxtapose that, taking this fine 3 people here and taking them to an organization, you find that it's chaotic. So even on the part of the organization as well, you find that a lot of even the values and the philosophies and the beliefs are mainly borrowed because our environment necessarily, and I'm saying this very carefully, does not allow a lot of us to dig deep into the core of why we exist and then build philosophies from there. So what we need to pay attention is to how do we harness this, like make it a core, so that even when they bring this radical 1,000,001 behaviors to an organization, there is a system that sifts that out and ensures that you come into an environment where you can immerse yourself into the culture. On the organizational part, it is important that you define what are the behaviors that brings your vision and your values to life and define those, so that anybody coming in with their multiple set of behaviors or multiple sets of ideologies can come in there and go through an immersive system to be able to imbibe your culture and behave accordingly. Because the truth of the matter is that if you're waiting for people to be refined from the university, you're actually going to be sitting on a long something. I'm sorry I said so, but I hope you understand what I'm just saying. So it behoves on the organization to actually have that beam that sifts out those bad behaviors or those behaviors that are not in congruence with your organization. Will people change from what they currently know? Not immediately, not until the foundations of the beliefs, and don't forget I started from there, not until the foundations of the beliefs has been changed, and not until the organization shows that there is a systemic pathway. I like to use the word systemic a lot because most times we pick and choose things. Do you see? Some organizations might say, oh, buying small chops every Friday is culture. Or working from home is culture. Those are subsets of it. The foundation of culture is in the philosophies, is in the ideologies, is in the values, is in the patterns, is in how we solve problems, is in how we take care of our people, how we take care of our clients in our organization. So you must have that set operating model first of all. If that's not working, regardless of who you bring, I've had CEOs tell me, oh, we hired you to do the job, so we don't need to tell you what to do. Absolute fallacy. Do you see? And that's why we continue having organizations that do not last, are not built to last, or do not have the capacity to last. Do you see what I'm saying? So you might have graduates coming out of school and they have the first. I'll even use my nephew as an example. He came in like a few months ago and had his internship, and the guy has vowed never to work for a traditional organization ever again. And I would ask him why, and he would say, I was treated like a thing. Now, this is a 18-year-old boy, 17-year-old boy who's just come into the workforce. You would immediately blame him and say he's the one with the bad behavior. He does not understand. But the organization did not have the technology to receive him. Do you see? And to fine-tune his definitions, to fine-tune his mindset, because don't forget, this mindset has been with this child for the last 18 years. So you don't expect him to come in 3 months and change if you do not have the receiving doc to say, you know what, you've come here, this is how things should be done, and this is why these things should be done. So when we talk about values, talk about ideologies, talk about culture, sometimes we pay attention only to the organization. We don't look at it from the big picture to say, oh, this is how it will affect you in future. This is how it will help you even build the foundations of your own personal goals and whatnot. So yeah, to your question, there is a huge gap. But even we have a responsibility of receiving these people or receiving these students into the market, because don't forget, they for a long time or for the longest time had experiences that are native to them. So you don't just wake up in the morning and decide those experiences do not matter. This is what I'm saying. Thank you.
A round of applause for her, ladies and gentlemen. I think I like the fact that you democratize the assignment. Everybody has their role to play. And I keep saying that if and when I become a minister for education in Nigeria, I'm going to do one thing and then leave. All Nigerian undergraduates or post-secondary school would write a personal statement on why they want to study the particular course they are studying. Because it's only in Nigeria that someone will go to university and say, oh, they gave me the course and I studied it. They told me to study the course. But I'm sure if you ask them to write a personal statement the way we write for our master's degree, where you have to ask yourself, do I really want this in my life? Half of our courses, nobody will take them. Because you have nothing to write. But because they've given you, I don't want to stay at home, like the only boy in church that does not have admission, you come in and then we have organizations who are assuming that we're expecting a fantastic four to come and join us, and you are shocked when they come in, and then wahala starts at that point. And like you said, both parties have a role to play to solve that problem. So Nisi, the beauty about Nigerian development is that, and in everything we see, we like to sprinkle tech. And we are sometimes seeing technology as the end instead of a means to the end. I was at the session where they're talking about tech to enable exports, and I laugh. And I say, okay, if you build the fantastic portal where a Nigerian in Spain can look at what a fellow Nigerian in Mushi is selling and wants to buy, can that product pass border? Can that product pass custom? That is why the only export we are doing now that is working is talent. You know why? There is no custom for it. Custom does not check. Let custom start checking talent. That will be a problem. But because so even if you have the best portal, so that question is around our educational system. Is e-education, digital education, education on tablets, education on phone, is that going to solve our problems?
So I, the interesting thing is there's no yes or no answer to that.
Aha, now you're swapped.
There are a lot of things that come into play there. And every time or anywhere I talk about EdTech, what I always say is that it's not about the technology. It's about education itself. My background is in technology, and I remember then in school, our professors would say to us, if you build a beautiful product and you slap it over a terrible process, you're not going to see any outcome, right? It's not going to magically create great results. As a matter of fact, it will make things even a lot crazy, complicated. Thank you. And so when it comes to leveraging technology to improve learning or improving our education system, there's a lot that needs to happen. Those who are building, if you look at our EdTech landscape in the country, those who are building EdTech solutions are building in silos, and they're not building along with the education experts who are in the domain. That's one. The second bit as well is that by the time if you say, oh, I have a startup, right? A lot of times you need to be able to demonstrate results, users, traction, revenue for you to be able to raise investments. So you find that a lot of them are building solutions in test prep, pass WAEC, pass JAMB, or tutoring, get a lesson teacher for your child. And to a very large extent, I would not really blame them because it sells. You need to run your business, you need to raise funds, right? But then there's also the bit about they don't understand the problems in the domain as much. I see a lot of, because right now at TTL we have an acceleration program that is, supporting edtech startups to be able to build effective solutions, scale, distribute that, all of that. And so I hear a lot of people come and say, oh, I have this great solution, it's digital resources. And you look at it and you're just like, come on. I remember a professor in an education institution was saying to me, he said they got some vendors to provide them with digital resources and they would say, oh, it's so interactive. And he's looking at a video and he's wondering, if I'm going to put videos in classrooms, I might as well just leave the teacher there because the child is just watching the thing. There's nothing happening, right? And so there's a lot we have to do with helping those who are building to understand the issues and be able to build effective solutions for those issues. But there's no way they can do it if those who are in the domain are not willing to work together with them and those who are building the solutions are not willing to work together. So there's that bit, right? And it's going deep to saying things like, I was hearing us talk about at the tertiary level, if we see the crisis we are sitting on at the basic education level, it will blow your mind. Because you have people who can't even read, write, understand English, and you're expecting them to go through secondary school and university, and you think that you would have wonderful graduates who are able to comprehension. I don't know, again, I'm on Twitter a lot, and you see people write things, and you understand that comprehension is not a skill that a lot of people have. And we cannot I feel like we overestimate some of all these critical skills and the importance of it, right? And so technology and what it should be doing is amplifying. I say to people, even as basic as in primary level when we teach kids about shapes, at the point where we're teaching them about shapes, there's opportunity there for us to help them build critical thinking skills and apply it. So if you ask a child, and they would give you answers, why are the tires of a car a circle and not a square? You're getting the child to think differently about that instead of just saying shape a circle is round and tires are round and that's it. I can identify that this is a circle, on the tire of a car.
And then you will now memorize it for exam.
Thank you
and
very
get 10
much.
over 10.
And there's no opportunity for them to think. So beyond just the resources, there's the opportunity to adopt innovative pedagogies, right, in the technology. And innovative pedagogies is everything. It can be the complicated terminologies, but it's as basic as what the example I've given, right? And there's also the bit about opportunities for testing, because the only time that we'll be able to know and have evidence of what works is if these people who build these solutions are able to have access to schools, to institutions, to be able to test, to know, is this actually creating the learning outcomes that we're, looking forward to or that we anticipate? Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much. I remember I had the most interesting shock of my life when I was doing my master's at Oxford. And, if the school in Nigeria, if lecturer comes and tell you there are 10 advantages of photosynthesis, if you cram all the 10 and you give him back then exam, what do you get? Distinction. Even the one that A is for God, he will give himself, collect from God on your behalf. But in school, during my master's, they tell you that if you gave the lecturer all he told you in class, you cannot get more than 60, max 56. Because according to that man, you've not done research. You've not added to yourself from what I gave you. It is not a beru, beso, that they are not here. My people are not here. So education is supposed to make you think, question why. But if you do that in our institutions, they will look at you like a trance. Why are you asking the question why? I don't understand. You failed already from the start. I only got help you to graduate. So there is a need to rejig that whole system of education. Well, knowing also the fact that education as we have it now is not for us. It wasn't designed for us to think. It was designed for us to get a job. So what's that designed for graduation gown? For a certificate that will land you at least something to feed your family with. Which means that there are two institutions. There's the educational institution and there is the labor market. But one thing is very glaring. That wire has cut since like 1990. The schools are doing their own. Labor market is doing their own. That's why at some point, Foreign graduates were getting all the jobs because they believed they went to correct school. Now it's private universities. So why are we not having that relationship between the educational sector and the labor market? And what should we be doing?
Okay. Thank you for that question. Why the relationship doesn't exist? The answer to that question, it remains unknown, actually. I'll tell you why it remains unknown. Because the whole premise for education as you evolve, from basic education to becoming a graduate, is to become a functional, value-creating citizen, which meant that a lot of what you were learning was supposed to help you create value for either employers or for entrepreneurship. The problem is that the industry has moved, right? But the educational system is still producing for a shadow that it thinks it is still interacting with. And because the educational system has not moved with the industry had to create a solution for itself. Hence, you see some corporates doing graduate
trainees
program, because they know that we have a certain disconnect between us and our suppliers, right? So the suppliers are no longer giving us finished products. We have to create some makeshift finishing processing for us to use. And so that's really what's happening. To solve the problem, just as a side, the work we do at Tech for Dev basically is to prepare people for the future of work, and I was sitting down with the leadership team at some point, and we were like, if everything was working, we shouldn't exist, right?
If Nigeria was working, half of the NGOs and society would not exist.
And we were like, well, then that just means we should work towards not existing, right? As an organization. I said that to say this. There needs to be a reintroduction of this. There's a long-term solution, and then there's the short-term solution to this problem. Long-term is the fact that there needs to be a reintroduction of academia to industry. A present day, like, hello, my name is academia, this is what I do. We have to have it again. And that can happen in a number of ways. So what a lot of people think is that the NUC is responsible for the curriculum that is taught. That is a false assumption. Let me clear the air for some people. What the NUC provides is a blueprint, right, for standards of education. So in terms of how should a course be graded, how should practicals go for a particular course, right? So if it's, for example, my major, civil engineering, it's like you have to have practicals, you have to have CWES, you have to have grades that are from this point to this point. And that's what NUC gives to a university.
So basically an educational framework.
Exactly. Now, who is responsible for the syllabus and the content of the curriculum? It's actually the schools, right? The departments in the schools that are responsible for that. Now, the NUC recommends that departments refresh their curriculum every 5 years.
I'm sure they've forgotten that part.
So they request that's done, every 5 years. And so when you hear of accreditation, what NUC is going to do in universities is, one, make sure that you're following the framework that was given. Obviously, you cannot create a course that is not captured within the NUC framework. Hence, what we had with film and multimedia being under mass comm, and things like product design and all of that being under computer science, etc. So it's the universities and the departments responsibility to do that. Now, the question that has to be answered is, how have you been doing that? If you've really been refreshing for every 5 years, in
If you've
quotes.
been passing your accreditation.
Yes, you've been passing the accreditation, right? How have you been doing that, right? Who is the industry player that your professors engage with to make sure that their curriculums are relevant? Because it doesn't seem to be any of us, right?
Maybe their spouses at home.
Aha. So it doesn't seem to be any of us. So there has to be that reintroduction. And it's a two-way thing, right? Can corporates and academia come together and say, it's not impossible to have a situation where a company like Shell adopts a department in a university, right? It's a win-win. You no longer need to spend on graduate training programs at the scale at which you are incurring that expenditure. The school is more valuable in terms of the tendency for its graduates to get jobs, because now they are relevant to the workforce. So the first thing is that handshake needs to happen again, right? And that's long term. Short term is embrace collaborations with informal or not informal, non-conventional education organizations like ours, hi, right?
We'll charge you for marketing. No worry, continue.
It's fine. Because if you're able to do that, you create relevance not just to the people who are currently in that education pipeline, but to people who are also out of it, right? People keep asking, this certificate, what am I going to use it for? Right? Because I come out with certificates that I cannot apply. I don't, and we have a lot of HR people here. And the question is, do you still ask for the certificates to be presented?
It's when audit is auditing them.
Yeah,
They'll not say, oh, the employer has not sent it. Kindly send before CUB tomorrow. The original copy.
Because the in thing now is actually competency testing, like assessments. Can you do it? Somebody said certificate as opposed to certificate, right? So I think that's a short-term fix.
While the long-term is
but the
to
long-term
ensure
fix
that
is we need to get that
engagement
happening again.
And I also think that maybe a mid-term can also be, universities should have a board that has the industry and the academia on it, that meets on a regular basis. And one of the things they should be asking themselves at every meeting is, industry, you are here. Can you employ them? No. Let's get to work. Next quarter, can you employ them? So it becomes the labor version of PTA meeting.
Exactly.
Where we are actually asking those questions and someone is answering and we are, effecting the change.
There's fatigue in that system, because in my time, we used to have companies like P&G come to school to have this sort of experientials within school. We even used to have as far back as motivational speakers coming to speak about leadership and soft skills and all of those things. But I think there's fatigue in that environment because it hasn't either been institutionalized, or we don't even do monitoring enough to understand the learnings we have seen from here, where we can improve, how we can improve this synergy. It just looks like one other thing that needs to happen, but not the main thing that needs to happen.
Well, one thing is very keen. This session has to be seen by the Ministry of Education, and then they have to implement it.
And one more thing, just to add. I think there is a huge need to incorporate soft skill, or rather soft skilling, into the conventional curricula.
True.
I'll give you an example. A lot of
the entrance examination into university.
Yeah, a lot of people I know only got a level of soft skill training, whether it's in communicating effectively, or how to listen, or how to manage conflict. They got it probably after they got a job, or during some sort of special training. Nothing happens
or in your unemployment fees, you are forced to learn it so you cannot get a job.
Exactly. So this is something that can happen from secondary school.
This topic is one that, if you're not careful, we'll be here till tomorrow, because it cuts across a lot of things. And time is fast spent. Now, we've talked about institutions here. We've talked about the educational institution, what they should be doing and should not be doing again. Talked about the labor market, what the responsibilities are and what we should be doing. Let's end we're talking about the people themselves, this talent. In 30 seconds, what should the talents themselves, either already have a job, in uni hoping to have a job, what should they start doing or what should they stop doing so that they can at least be part of this competitive workforce? 30 seconds. I know it's not enough time. 30 seconds. Let me start with Nanka.
Okay, I think really it's the mindset shift. That's where it needs to start from. I feel like the talents of these days need to take themselves from immediate gratification to knowing that when I develop myself, I develop my mindset, I can be an active part of an organization or an active part of something that would last long term versus just getting immediate gratification. So I think that mindset needs to shift, and we need to move away from subsistence. So I feel like a lot of us, or a lot of people in the market, not you guys are very special, but I think a lot of us are at the basis of everything very hungry. So the aluta hunger is more fiery than developing myself. So if I'm able to take that out of the equation, knowing fully well that once I amplify my value would attract the right amount of value, then we would begin to see a change in that space. So this is for talent. For the other people, I have more to say, but let's talk about talent.
So for the talent, mindset shift. Nisi.
Thank you. I think it's also related to mindset, but I think I would say to especially a group of young people right now who, to what she was saying about that hunger, and you find that a lot of them place themselves in a particular level where their skills are not commensurate and looking for and requesting certain rewards and payments, not in line with that. I remember someone would say, I saw this young person who has never run a startup before, who describes himself as a startup coach. And it's all of these things about personal branding and put yourself out there and everything.
Well, that's the demerit of perspire to aspire.
That a lot of times there's all of the packaging and less depth and substance in it. And so for me, is for young people right now in that space too, it's nice to have all of the externals, but can you really focus on building deep and building that substance? Because only then and then will, when push comes to shove, that you're able to really, provide value or be able to get the commensurate reward that aligns with your skills. I think that's also in the mindset shift and what we're talking about, soft skills. I was saying to a colleague yesterday, with all of these soft skills, I feel like we overestimate. There's a bit about self-awareness is a very huge skill people need to have. I feel like young
also
people
being a human being.
Being able to really say, this is what I know, this is what I do not know, and this is how I want to go about filling that gap. And that people and young people consistently do that self-review. Whether it's quarterly, I have a young person on my team who would say every 6 months, she'll say to me, Nisi, please, can I have a meeting with you? I do this review of myself every month to see where I am, have my skills improved. I want you to give me feedback on this. I think that that's something that young people need to learn. Whether you're trying to get a job or you're you're working in a company or you're looking to go to the next level of your career, I think that that's an important bit.
Thank you. So most importantly is creating value beyond the paparazzis, beyond the branding, beyond the Canva design CV. Is what do you have? What is that substance? That table, you've broken it. I don't think they can fix it again. And also is soft skill is important. But soft skill at work is not different from soft skill as a human being. If you don't even know how to communicate with your neighbors in the streets, it's not when you get to work, you will now be saying, I am a prolific communicator. How? So first, be a human being. First, be self-aware to develop yourself. Then you can translate that into the workplace. There's nothing like workplace soft skill, life soft skill. It's basically the same thing. It's basically where you apply it. So, Michael.
I'm not going to say anything new. I'm just going to say two things. One, always make sure that you're creating value. Two, always self-evaluate. If you do these two things, you'll be fine.
Shoki Lobeoge. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being a very good listener. And to my panelists, thank you very much for answering my very interesting questions. Now I can leave you to have lunch in peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Business Day CSA to kindly join. Thank you very much. All right, while that is going on, we would like to take our closing remarks right now. But before that, I'd like to thank our sponsors, that's Seamless HR. Please give a round of applause as I call them. Jobberman, as well as Lead Right. Please, let's give a round of applause. All right, I would like to invite our Business Day Center for Social and Economic Development person in charge, Mrs. Ime Enang. Please, can you give her a round of applause? Don't worry, right after this, we would have lunch and we will talk with other people.
Thank you very much, Kemi. That is not Yoruba. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for your patience. Thank you for sticking with us to this time. I'd like to say a big thank you on behalf of Business Day to everyone who's made the time, despite the many other reasons you could be away from here. You've made the time to share knowledge and to share your experience. I'm sure that quite a number of us here, there's what we've learned from this afternoon. Am I right? Or this from morning, and I've taken note of quite a number of nuggets that were shared in the course of the day. So for HR practitioners in the room, whether you're traditional or modern, remote work is here to stay. We agree. There's nothing we can do about it. There's also nothing we can do about mobility of talents. Then also, people mirror their leaders. We heard that this morning, or was I alone on that? Okay, great. There was also something on how we define results. So now performance management is key. Then the human resource is the most important resource. We heard that from our keynote speaker earlier on. And there is need for us to have value-based laws, value-based policies. Diversity and inclusion has context. So when we go to the UK, US, and everywhere, we see the things there. Not everything will work here. Please, let's bear that in mind. It doesn't matter how mobile we are, these things have context. Imagine talking about LGBTQ. It won't work here. We will never understand it. Never. It doesn't matter whether you're Gen Z, Gen A, we will never understand that. Please. Then don't let your mindset and perception preclude you from opportunities from the last panel. Be agile, and also please develop your business acumen, because there's a business case to almost everything that we do. So it's not that the boss does not want us to do it. Let's develop the business case. Thank you once again. I'll say thank you to our sponsors, Lead Right, Jobberman, and Seamless HR, so that I don't, and our knowledge partners, of course. Thank you. Our knowledge partners, the people practice. Thank you so very much. And I think after we've had a good day like this, for being the kind of wonderful audience that you still are, it's just appropriate that you also give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you very much for coming. Now our event is ended. Lunch is served.
All right, in wrapping up, I just want to mention that you can call me for your event. Sometimes I'm a comedian, sometimes I'm an MC. So call me. I can give you my number after this. My full name, by the way, just in case you're looking for me on all social media platforms, Kemi Michael is my name. But then, I'm not Yoruba, I'm a Kwaibom. My full name is Akeminiobong Michael Okoko. Let's just leave it at that. Thank you very, very much for coming, and I do appreciate it. And yes, if you turn to your first page, you're going to see that we have an award coming up real soon. This is coming up this month, and also if you keep turning up until your last page, you are going to see that we have our SME 100 as well coming up real soon. So do well to register on our platform and prepare to attend. Thank you very much. Have yourselves a beautiful day.